It is 6 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Thursday, March 20th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. Jeff and Bill are back after a one-day break. We both have kids. It's spring break for both of us, and we got a day off from Salem. So thank you, Salem.
Yeah, it was great. Slept in a little bit. I didn't even wake up until like 5:30. It was amazing. That was incredible.
We live weird lives, Bill.
Yeah. Not many people know there are 2 3 o'clocks every day, but we see them.
You do.
It's a surprise. Yeah, it's a surprise for many people.
We are back in today, and it's an absolutely fire show. You're not going to want to miss. It's jam-packed. Like, there's so much news going on. You ready for this? Kristi Burton Brown's going to join us here in just a second because there's a big battle happening today down at the state capitol over funding for schools. And Jared Polis sending a memo to these teachers that are planning to protest today. The memo saying, get back in your classrooms. By the way, you're not doing that good a job anyways. This was like right out of something I probably would have written to a teachers union. He writes, let's remember that nearly 70% of third graders can't read or do math on grade level, and this is leaving parents scrambling to find care. So it is a battle. This is going to be a street battle down at the state capitol today as teachers are protesting, and they're coming in from around the state because they don't want the budget cuts affecting them. Budget shortfall of $1.2 billion here in the state of Colorado. Jared Polis saying we're going to have to make some cuts to education. The teachers saying not on our watch. So they're going to be down. They're expecting 2,000 teachers down at the state capitol today. I'm going to go down and cover it. I'm going to go have some conversations with the teachers today and ask them about their feelings for Jared Polis. This is going to be interesting. So, Kristi Burton Brown, State Board of Education, joining us here in just a few minutes. We're going to talk with her. Then, in the 7 o'clock hour, Dave Williams, chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, is going to join us, give us some insight to the Steve Bannon event. These leftists have been hounding any hotel that wants to host Steve Bannon and the Colorado Republican Party with phone calls and emails and going down there to protest outside of them. And so 2 of them have bowed out, saying they don't want to host the event. Dave's got a 3rd one. We'll get the inside details on that. You're not going to want to miss that conversation. Then in the 8 o'clock hour, Luke Niforatos on fascinating article in the Wall Street Journal about the collapse of the marijuana industry in Pueblo. We're going to talk with him. And then Ken Montera, CU Board of Regents Vice Chair, has a memo out for another CU regent calling for her to be investigated. Wanda James. If you remember, we had Jimmy Sengenberger on to talk about this growing scandal within the CU Regent Board. Well, the vice chair is going to join us and give us some insight on that in the 8 o'clock hour. And then the 9 o'clock hour, John Fabbricatore on Jeanette Vizguera and DJT sending her out of here. And every progressive in Colorado losing their mind over this. The mayor, the governor, the senators, Hickenlooper and Bennett, all up in arms about this one. She was picked up coming out of Target, but she had this coming from my perspective. And John has been on this case for years, has been following Jeanette Vizguera. So we'll get the insight from him in the 9 o'clock hour. So jam-packed. You're not going to want to miss any of this. Let's get going now. It's time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning, 22 and partly cloudy. Feels like 16 degrees outside. In Denver, expecting a high of 56 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, an executive order expected to be signed today by DJT aimed at eliminating the Department of Education. He'll then direct Education Secretary Linda McMahon to take all steps necessary to begin the closure of the DOE and return authority to individual states. Authorities say 2 men escaped from an ICE facility in Aurora earlier this week. The 2 men reportedly escaped from the Denver Contracted detention facility on Tuesday when a power outage caused a door to unlock. 32-year-old Joel Jose.
It's that easy.
Man, when I read this, I was like, what time of the morning is this real? Did this really?
It sounds like something out of a movie, but just way dumber. So,
no doubt.
Hey, Johnny, let's coordinate. You cut the power. Okay, what's next? Well, nothing's next because the doors will open.
You can hear the sound effects right now.
Yes, you can. That's exactly.
What? In Spanish. Here's what's dumber. Joel Jose. Okay, you know what his last name is, or middle? It's Joel Jose Gonzalez. Really? Do we need to?
Two Gonzaleses?
Yes.
For the emphasis?
Yes. G squared. All right. He was arrested last month in Adams County. 24-year-old Gaylond Vito Romero was arrested last month in Douglas County. ICE says the search for the two men is continuing. 4 Pueblo County Sheriff's deputies are on paid leave after firing shots in a deadly standoff that left a suspect dead and 3 police officers injured. Authorities say Billy Soto ambushed the officers Tuesday night as they searched for him in connection to an attempted murder, and then deputies assisted police and exchanged gunfire with Soto before he was killed. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation is leading the case.
Did you hear what the chief said about this?
I did hear a little bit. I think I saw it on your feed. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
All right,
was
this
great.
is the chief of police down in Pueblo, Chris Noller. The blood of my officers lays at the steps of our capital.
Wow.
Noller said Colorado's soft on crime approaches have put his officers and the community in danger, and this is just the latest example. I guess this guy had been out multiple times, 14 felony arrests, most of which have been pled to misdemeanors. I mean, and a member of the MS-13 gang.
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, you just look at his mugshot, and he looks pretty cocky, pretty confident. Wow. That is amazing.
So did the police end his life?
Yes, they did.
He
That's
took
what
the
it says in this story.
What is that? The room temperature challenge?
Yes, that's
His
right.
body's now at the temperature of the room.
There you go.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So long.
Yep. Play stupid games. Win stupid prizes. Nasty lefties, criminals, thugs, asshats who continue to destroy private property and vandalize Teslas. Some of these videos are just disgusting what they're doing. There's Tesla dealerships vandalized not only in the States but also in Montreal. Kevin O'Leary on CNN.
I mean, is it okay for an American company to just be hated, for people to want it to not do well?
I think go back to point one. When you set a car on fire, you should go to jail. You're a criminal.
Any car,
I don't think we have to talk about it in any other context. And all those cars have cameras in them, and those dealerships have cameras. You're beyond being stupid when you do that. You're going to go to jail, and you now have a government that just got their mandate. They can't wait to find idiots that do this. You're going to spend 5 to 20 years in prison. If they get them on terrorism, which I think is a stretch, they will have no parole, no shortened sentence. They'll rot in hell in prison for 20 years. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, that's okay.
Yeah, I agree, but I do think it is terrorism. I disagree with him there. The U.S. wants to take over Ukraine's largest power plant as part of the ceasefire deal with Russia. Ukrainian leader Zelensky says that he talked to DJT about one power plant, which is under Russian occupation. This nuclear power station is the largest in Europe. The Federal Reserve is holding interest rates steady. Chair Jerome Powell said the Fed is focusing on achieving maximum employment and stable prices. The central bank forecasts that 2 rate cuts will come later this year. Fallout continues after the JFK files released. Representative Paulina Luna seeking the CIA Inspector General's report that implicates the CIA.
Whether or not we find out who actually pulled the triggers, I don't think that we'll see an actual name, because from my understanding, information has been destroyed. However, the information that's been brought forward, as you're seeing, is creating a bigger picture and filling in many gaps. I think answering questions that Americans have had for decades on what actually transpired on that day in Dallas with JFK. And frankly, what we're finding is the CIA is and was a lot dirtier than anyone could have ever imagined. Thank goodness we have good people in charge who are going to be flushing the system.
Boy, that's the truth. Denver police say a scooter rider has died after a Tuesday crash near Regents University. Police say the unidentified victim was hit by another vehicle while riding a stand-up scooter near Federal and West 52nd Avenue. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at lairfireplacepatio.com. The NCAA tournament tips off today. One regional in Denver at Ball Arena this morning. They all tip off all the games, starting with Wisconsin, Montera, BYU, VCU, 11:30 and 2:05, and then tonight Yale and Texas A&M and UC San Diego and Michigan tonight at Ball Arena. God, I wish I could go to those. I may sneak over there and watch those. 19 in Greenwood Village, 20 in North Glen, 22 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
These people are deeply weak.
I said weird, but I don't think that's just pretty funny from John Kennedy. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Weather, sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free, no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Partly cloudy, still a little breezy, mild, upper 50s, near 30 tonight, upper 50s Friday. The weekend will be in the 50s and lower 60s, a little bit breezy. Slight chance Saturday for a few showers. A warming trend Monday and Tuesday. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Well, welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. It's a big day today as 2,000 protesters are expected down at the Colorado State Capitol. Teachers, in fact, so many teachers have taken the day off that school districts are canceling classes. Jared Polis not happy about it, putting out a memo late Tuesday saying canceling school at the last minute in several districts will put strains and hardships on parents and will leave kids without instruction and many without a safe place to go. Let's remember that nearly 70% of third graders can't read or do math on grade level. And this leaves parents scrambling to find care. Kind of impressive, Governor Polis. That's something I would have told these teachers' unions. Well, to give us a sense of what's happening, the battle over education funding, you know the name, you know the voice, Kristi Burton Brown. She's on the State Board of Education representing District 4. Good morning, board member Kristi Burton Brown.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Jeff and Bill. How are you guys?
We're good. In fact, I'm going to go down and cover this protest, and some teachers are already texting me. and they've got some good posters. Migrants costing $250 million, homeless and drug addicts costing $1 billion, but you're going to save $6 million by affecting education? Come on now. Kristi Burton Brown, tell us about the budget crisis facing the state of Colorado and why education needs to be cut.
Sure. I mean, I think one important thing to remember about the budget crisis is that it's not that the state legislature is actually getting a decrease in their budget. They're getting a decrease in the increase that they get, as they've been getting every year. This is really a result of the people who control the legislature, the Democrats who have a big majority there, misspending money that was allocated. Some money they got in large chunks during and after COVID that they decided to allocate to ongoing programs instead of for temporary programs. So this is exactly what happens when you don't budget good. Like if a family doesn't budget good, you don't get to complain when you don't get an additional increase. You have to do your budget better. And the legislature doesn't like to do that. They are complaining about Tabor on the Senate and House floor. You see Democrats almost every single day right now getting up and saying, oh, this is the fault of Tabor, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights that actually puts a revenue cap on the legislature and says you have a limit to what you can spend. Population plus inflation increase. And more than that, if you collect more than that, you've got to return it to the people. It is one of the only things in Colorado keeping liberal Democrats in check from constant overspending. So just to say that's the actual problem right here, is that they have overspent in the past. Now they're not getting enough to approve and continue the programs that they put in place that didn't have an end date, and that's why they're having this crisis.
We're talking with Kristi Burton Brown. She represents the State Board of Education from District 4. That's the Eastern Plains of Colorado. Now, when you say that these are overspending on projects, can you give us some details on that? Because the complaint I'm reading in the media is, well, Medicaid has gotten too expensive. And in fact, the costs for Medicaid have increased outside of the rate of Tabor, which is inflation. So that's where the money's going. But you're saying it's a little different. It's some of these other projects. Can you give us some details?
Sure. Well, I mean, and even if you look at Medicaid, often what happens is that in the state of Colorado, they continually expand who can qualify for already existing programs. So we have, Medicaid is absolutely one of the huge pieces of the Colorado budget. Education is another huge piece. Another huge piece that people don't always talk about is the state workforce. The state workforce in Colorado honestly needs it's like DOGE at the federal level that's looking into inefficiencies, cutting bureaucracy, cutting unnecessary employees. Now, of course, I don't think any people are ever unnecessary, but I think their jobs can be. And so when you look at the state workforce and how much it has expanded over the last few years, it's pretty incredible. And so that has happened under Governor Polis. And I think instead of cutting too much from education or other areas that people, it really is something government should be providing, which there, in my view, there's very few things government should provide, but there are a few things that they should. A state workforce, an ever-expanding state workforce, is not one of them. Another example of a program that they can't cover right now that is somewhat related to education is the free and reduced lunch program addition that Colorado approved on the ballot.
Right.
Now, what they did...
The kids at Kent Denver and Cherry Creek getting free and reduced lunches.
Well, exactly. And that's sort of the point, is voters were persuaded to say, oh, hey, what about all the literally poor kids in the state who aren't getting enough food? Why don't we give them breakfast as well? But they said, we don't want people to have to admit that they need this food, then some kids won't get it, so let's just feed every kid in the state. Now, shocker that a program like that would go millions over budget, because a lot of people are like, oh, hey, if you're going to feed my kids, then okay, I won't pack them lunch, even though I can, even though my family can easily afford it. And so that has just ballooned in the budget. And so right now, the legislature is having to contend with that. Do we push this program back since we now need to spend more than the people approved? Or, how are we going to... So it's just an example of what they do. They overspend in many programs. They're not just targeting the people who actually need something. They're expanding it to everyone who wants to claim it, and then they wonder why the budget's so huge.
We're talking with Kristi Burton Brown. She serves on the State Board of Education representing District 4, which is the Eastern Plains of Colorado, my district. So, Kristi Burton Brown, let's talk about the formula for funding schools. That's another part of the debate. Jared Polis wanting to change the formula from a 4-year average of attendance in order to determine the number of the amount of money that a school gets to a singular year census. Can you give us some insight on that and the debate between that Jared Polis and CEA, the Colorado Education Association?
Yes, yeah, Jeff. I think it's a really interesting debate. And as a side note to what I just said, too, just for context, the state full-time employees have grown by 7,000 people in the last 6 years. So just for context.
Wow, 7,000 more employees?
Yeah. 7,000 full-time employees in the last 6 years. But moving to the education formula that you asked about, it is a really interesting question because right now the education formula can consider the former 4 years in a school district because we have a lot of school districts across the state where student population is decreasing. And so what schools say is they say, well, our population was increasing before this. And so because of that, we've hired more teachers, more administrators. We don't want to just fire all these people. Give us like almost a grace period to be able to average out the student numbers instead of suddenly dropping off. Now, most conservatives would say, and most budget-conscious people would say, if you don't have the student population, you obviously shouldn't have as many employees because you don't have as many kids to serve. So why are we over-employing people, especially on the admin side, when the student population doesn't match? You know, one example of this is the Cherry Creek School District, where student population decreased by, I believe it was 6%, but admin increased by, I believe it was 13%. Cherry Creek School District and St. Vrain School District are two of the worst offenders when it comes to this, seeing student population decrease, but admin employees and spending increase at the same exact time. And so fixing this formula would say, let's be more in reality. And if you want a 1-year, average, okay, you can look at the last year and you can look at the current year. I can't remember if Polis is saying that or if he's saying, no, just look at the year you're actually living in. One little bit balance between the two that I think I would support after talking to some good people who are on school boards and districts is move to the current year numbers, but give them a little bit of a grace period. Like it's at 4 years right now, move to 2 years, and then maybe move to 1 year, and then move to the current year. I don't think that's unreasonable to do that, although in the end, I actually support, what Governor Polis is saying on that. We shouldn't be averaging out with unrealistic numbers that just gives a huge increase in admin spending that isn't necessary for the students we're serving.
Talking with Kristi Burton Brown. She's a member of the State Board of Education representing District 4. So where do you think they're going to land on this? This is a $1.2 billion shortfall. The Sun 2 days ago coming out with an article saying, well, the JBC, which is the Joint Budget Committee down at the Colorado State Capitol, has cut some things like equestrian therapy, but nowhere near what needs to be cut to meet the $1.2 billion. I'll ask you this. Do you think it's right for teachers and our schools to bear some of the brunt of these cuts, all of the brunt of these cuts? Where do you think they're going to land trying to meet that $1.2 billion shortfall?
Yeah, certainly not all of the brunt. I think that's unfair for sure. But I think part of the problem with Colorado's education spending is we do have too much. Unlike the states around us, we only spend 55% of education funding in the classroom. And that means like teacher salaries, aides that are working in the classroom, supplies for students. Most of the states around us spend 2/3 of education funding directly in the classroom. And Colorado has an overabundance of funding spent on administrative and bureaucracy. The Common Sense Institute actually did a really good report on this. So they're the ones that also illustrate the numbers of like student population decreasing, admin spending increasing at the same time. So, I think if those are the kind of choices that schools are making, I think cutting some of the admin spending is important in Colorado. I just think it should be going into the classroom instead, rather than being taken away from schools. What I don't agree with is constant increase in education spending when, to the governor's point, nearly 70% of kids across the state can't read and do math at grade level. You can't just constantly dump more money at a problem and say that it's going to fix it. If you look at the national picture, you see that some of the states with the best academic numbers do spend more than Colorado does on education, but some of them do not. Some of them spend significantly less than Colorado does on education and yet have incredibly higher results. So you see that money actually isn't the deciding factor here. And so I think that's what we shouldn't do in education, is constantly increase the money. I think we should reallocate more in the classroom, less on the admin side. But I think the state legislature is going to have to get really serious about cutting their ever-expanding programs that are being granted to people who don't truly need them. And they're often not willing to do that, unfortunately.
So today is a big protest. 2,000 teachers are expected downtown. Now, my take on this was, okay, you definitely shouldn't be canceling classes. Teachers should not be taking time out of their day to do this because, in part, you have a lobbying arm called the CEA that spends $13.2 million a year, mostly in membership dues coming in. So teachers are already paying for these lobbyists. Now they have to go downtown to rally. They have to take time off of school. As a member of the State Board of Education, do you have thoughts on teachers taking the day, causing schools to have to cancel classes in order to go down and protest?
Sure. I mean, on one hand, of course, you have your First Amendment rights to go protest. That applies to teachers as well. There's always an interesting balance between First Amendment rights and government employees, though. Teachers in the classroom, for example, because they are government employees, aren't allowed to just walk in and teach absolutely anything they want and say everything they want, like a non-government employee might be able to do, because it is considered government speech at some point. There's always an interesting limit on government employees' rights when they're on the job. Now, I think what teachers would be doing is, I assume, taking an unpaid day to go protest. And then, of course, if you're not operating in your government employee position, you have full First Amendment rights to go do whatever you want. I think the unfortunate piece here is that the governor, and I don't often agree with the governor, but he is right about kids who already either just had a week of spring break or about to have a week of spring break are now going to get even fewer days in the classroom when the performance and academic levels are already so low. I don't understand why teachers can't protest during spring break when kids already aren't in school. And most likely it's because teachers don't want to miss their own vacation time. But in my view, we're not really looking at kids' academics and serving the kids who we are hired to teach and serve when we're so focused on protest instead.
We're talking with Kristi Burton Brown. She serves on the State Board of Education representing District 4. It's the Eastern Plains of Colorado. All right, want to pivot here. A district in your jurisdiction now just had a lawsuit come down yesterday saying that they have to replace and put in 18 books that the district found to be graphic, pornographic, inappropriate for kids of really any age, but definitely not elementary, middle school age. And the ACLU filed the lawsuit against the Elizabeth School District, the court coming in saying you've got to put these books back into the library. Have you had any opportunity to review the decision on that case? Do you have any thoughts on it?
I have not been able to review it yet. To your point, it just came out yesterday. But I do have thoughts on it. I've talked to people out in Elizabeth about this and other people involved. I would assume that they'll appeal this. Just because one judge says something doesn't mean it's the accurate interpretation of the Constitution. I think what's really unfortunate about the ACLU suing the Elizabeth School District and then the one judge coming down on this side is that they're completely, in my view, not taking into account the process that Elizabeth School District used to take these books out. They had a parent review committee determine that these books weren't appropriate. I mean, this is like grassroots activity that actually isn't just a school board saying, we personally don't like this material, get it out. It is taking the opinion and view of parents who are taking their time on a committee to review books and say, we don't think this matches our community. I do think you're going to have different communities across the state come to different conclusions about a whole host of books. There are books on every topic under the sun, literally, and some fit certain communities and some don't. Some, I think, and a lot of these books, those 18 books I put in this category, parents at large aren't comfortable with their children just having this kind of material available to grab off the shelf. And I think, I'm think it's very disturbing. A lot of parents would agree that the ACLU wants to push this kind of sexually explicit material just to be completely available for children with no limitations. Like, hey, the book is available, but a parent has to sign off. Like, there's no balanced opinion even like that from groups like the ACLU. And of course, they certainly come in and oppose parents wanting to remove it. The other point I bring up is every single school library has to be limited in which books it provides. Like, there's a limited amount of space. So for a court or the ACLU to say that a school district or parents in that district can't say, here are the topics we want to make available, here are the books we want to make available. You literally cannot have a book at every age level on every possible topic under the sun in a small school library. You just can't. So to say that 18 sexually explicit books must be included, I think is completely wrong, and I think the decision's unconstitutional, and I hope they appeal it.
Well, we're talking with Kristi Burton Brown. Now, Kristi, I cannot read excerpts of that book on air. I will be terminated from my job. The station could lose its license if I did that. I have posted some of the excerpts on x.com/Jeff Hunt, and I'll continue to list out the arguments that are coming from the ACLU is that these books are pushed out because of the author's perspectives. No. It is content, and the content is terrible in this case, should not be before kids. And in fact, the idea that anyone believes this stuff should be before kids is disgusting. But if you want to read it, I can put it, I'll put up some of those excerpts at x.com/Jeff Hunt. Now, Kristi Burton Brown, big day today. Donald Trump is set to sign an executive order later today, essentially winding down the Department of Education. He can't get rid of it entirely. That takes an act of Congress. Give us your thoughts on this historic day.
Sure. I think it's a great decision. And I think anyone who cares about cutting bureaucracy is going to support something like this. The federal government has grown way too large. We have over 2.4 million federal employees across the nation. And I'm not saying they're all unnecessary. Many of them are very vital to what goes on in our country and to making the right things run well. The problem is that just like in Colorado, there's an overabundance of state workforce. Excuse me, that's true at the federal level and certainly in the Department of Education. We don't need extra hands for education funding to pass on its way down to the state. And I think it's really important to point out that ending the Department of Education or dismantling it, because I agree with you, it does have to finally go through Congress in the end, that's not the same as ending federal funding of education. In fact, President Trump has made that extremely clear and said that he wants to continue the federal funding of education that comes down to the states and then down to the local districts. It's just, in many ways, cutting out the middleman. This big agency that administers all these programs and passes through all the funding. We have too many layers in government. And as Colorado, we are a local control state. We should welcome decisions like this that cut down more layers of pass-through bureaucracy that in the end limits the amount of money that comes down to the state because it's eaten up by all of these middle layers.
I mean, Kristi Burton Brown, we have spent trillions upon trillions of dollars in education, and we're actually doing worse compared to other countries. We continue to drop down. So what needs to change from your perspective? What do you think is going to be the ultimate solution here to improve the quality of education our kids are getting?
You know, Jeff, I think there's multiple solutions. I think one of the biggest ones is more school choice. The more options parents have, the more competition in the marketplace, so to speak, often the better you see kids doing. I mean, we look at Liberty Commons School up in Fort Collins. They're the top performing high school in the state year after year after year. I don't think they've dropped below number 4 in 20 years. Not only are they a school choice option, they also teach a type of curriculum that's really good for kids, focuses on character, has really good structure, teaches them how to think, not only what to think. And you know, they've proven they can have the same results whether you're in an affluent area of Fort Collins or whether you're in the area of Fort Collins that has trailer parks. So regardless of a family's economic level, they've shown that their kind of teaching works for families, works for kids. And I think you also see successful schools like that having a smaller student-to-teacher ratio. That's a big problem in education today, is these schools packed full of kids with one teacher who, despite best intentions and good skills, can't effectively teach that many kids. So I think when we open the doors to more school choice, or protect it in Colorado, because we do have, one of the best school choice systems in the nation here, but it needs to be protected and preserved. You see lowering of teacher-to-student ratio. You see evidence-based curriculum and teaching styles that actually work for kids across the spectrum. I think those are some of the solutions we need to see in Colorado, but I'd always say more school choice, more competition in the marketplace is better. And unfortunately, a number of the failing school districts in Colorado refuse to allow charter schools in, even though they've proven that kids can perform better at options like that. Adams 14 is one of the districts I'd bring up. It's one of the most low-performing districts in the state, and they're also quite resistant to school choice options.
Kristi Burton Brown, she serves on the State Board of Education, representing District 4. Thanks so much for taking time. Lots of activity around education. We appreciate your insight on this.
Thank you, Jeff and Bill. Great to be with you.
You can follow Kristi Burton Brown at x.com/KBB Colorado. That's x.com/KBB Colorado. All right, I want to talk to you about our friends over at the Art of Granite. Are you tired of your outdated kitchen or bathroom, dreaming of sleek granite, luxurious marble, or that modern look of quartz? At the Art of Granite, they believe your home is a canvas. Owner and master craftsman Mitch Floria personally collaborates with each client, ensuring every detail is perfectly executed. From small vanities to complete kitchen overhauls, they do it all. And the best part, Mitch cuts out the middleman. He sources premium granite, marble, and quartz directly from his Denver West warehouse, offering you wholesale prices. And right now, an incredible offer exclusively for KNUS listeners. All you got to do, mention KNUS and get a free bathroom countertop with new kitchen countertops, or choose a free kitchen or bathroom sink with any countertop package. Don't wait. Transform your home into the oasis you deserve. Schedule your free consultation with Mitch today. Visit their stunning showroom in Denver West, or go to theartofgranite.com. That's theartofgranite.com. Mention KNUS. That's all. KNUS for those exclusive savings. We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Bill, what do you think of this memo from Jared Polis to the teachers that's, don't take the day off. You've got a lot of issues to deal with. This is an interesting battle. The Republicans are kind of like on the sidelines here. And it's the teachers' unions and the progressives there fighting Jared Polis. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree with Polis that student achievement isn't where it needs to be. And, Kristi makes a good point about the bloat inside the administration. And I've seen that a lot in school districts. There's a problem with... in order to advance someone's career as far as promotions and don't want to move them along, and how do you create, and that is an issue. But I do think that some of those administrative positions have been created out of necessity, in part because some of your kids are monsters, that we don't have the ability inside the public school system to deal with some of the disciplinary and educational problems that you do have. The idea of holding a kid back over the course of a year based on achievement sounds great in theory until you have to sit down and talk to that parent, because that parent turns around and all of a sudden now it's the school's fault. It's your fault. It's the teacher's fault. It's not my beautiful kid. My beautiful kid's an angel. My beautiful kid knows exactly what they're doing. It's your fault. You're not motivating them. They would do your work, but your work is stupid. You don't motivate them. And so we push back on that. We push back on the idea that your kid hasn't shown up for 20 classes, and we're 30 days into the semester of school, and 10 days in class. How come? No, you can't take my kid out. You can't. We have no divergent program, so that administrative burden gets spread around, and that's part of it. There also are extra rules and things like that we need that create some of a problem. So yeah, but there has been administrative bloat, but part of it is because part of the students that are arriving at school aren't necessarily where they need to be, nor are the kids arriving at school with the ability, and I'm talking early on, like when we get into kindergarten and first grade, with the ability to be good students. This isn't necessarily applicable to here in the U.S., but there's a problem in England that they're seeing right now in some of their public schools of kids coming in, not understanding colors, numbers, alphabet, and also showing up to kindergarten not being potty trained, and first grade as well.
Do you think that's because
silly.
Culturally they just passed it off on the government, like the parents? Because
I think it's a lack of involvement and a little bit of a laziness to parenting, but I think also it's the attitudes I've seen, and oh God, I'm going to sound like a grouchy old man. Get off my porch, kids. The attitudes I've seen in parenting in the younger demographics, and here this is anecdotal, but here is, for me, one of the easiest examples that we see. There's an elementary school in my neighborhood, real close to the house. And in order to park and pick your kid up from daycare, you park on the street and the after-school care, and you have to walk, and it's probably 35 yards maybe from where you have to park on the street in order to get the kid in, because the access point is the lunchroom. There is an access for... vehicles, if it's the dumpsters, the dump trucks, etc., that there's a small parking lot there, and normally it's maintenance vehicles, things like that. They'll drive all the way up there to grab the kids because they don't want to walk the extra 15 yards. And you're like, hang on. And then the best part is when they get out, instead of following the roundabout like they're supposed to, they go the wrong way out of the roundabout and enter back into traffic going the wrong way. On purpose, because it's quicker and easier. And I see that decision made over and over again. The school in which my 18-year-old works, she goes ahead and they get parents calling in all the time to pick up their kids 15 or 20 minutes before school is released, because they don't want to sit in the long line after school. It has nothing to do with the child having another appointment or somewhere they have to be. They just find an inconvenience to wait. So what they tell their student is, because it's better for us, we're going to take you out of school. So as a child, how important is education? If mom and dad say, I need to get you out of school because it's going to be quicker for us to get home, that doesn't tell you.
Wine and
it doesn't
TV shows.
Why do you need to spend time doing your homework if we can just get out of school early because it's inconvenient? Why do I have to show up for class if I think getting to class on time is inconvenient? I don't get the time to spend with my kids. So it rolls downhill. This is what I see.
All right, we'll continue. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is the Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Here's a text message for you, Bill, from the George Carlin line. Think of how stupid the average person is and realize half of them are stupider than that.
Oh, yes. I share that with my kids all the time. All the time.
All right, let's do some You Choose the News. Speaking of stupidity.
Yeah, speaking of stupidity, here's the moment of the show where we get to highlight it. Yes, it's America's favorite fake radio news game show, something we call You Choose the News. I've spent moments this morning scouring the interwebs for really dumb stories about us humans, because that's only as long as it takes. Then I have given him more ridiculous headlines so that we can play this fake radio news game show. Why? Because this is what happens when we are given full control of our airwaves. Nobody in charge is awakened for another 8 minutes or so we have been left unattended. Aha! Lesson for all of you. This is what happens. And remember, no one knows this actually goes on every morning, so shh, it's just a big secret. Okay, now, Blake Olson joins us from the newsroom. Jeff Hunt in the studio. Gentlemen, your choices this morning. Headline number 1, being cheeky. Headline number 2, old school is cool. Headline number 3, fooling death. And headline number 4, your privacy is an illusion. Mr.
Being
Hunt.
cheeky.
Yes, being cheeky. 2 Japanese tourists in their 20s have been detained for a couple of weeks in China and now have been deported. Why? Well, they were being just a wee bit cheeky. The 2 tourists took pictures of themselves near the Great Wall. That is when one of them decided to go full moon. Yes, dropped his pants and mooned the camera. Unfortunately, the incident, and again, they were on the Chinese side of the Great Wall, was captured by authorities. Yes, they were immediately arrested and detained on the spot and then held for about 2 weeks, wanting to know who needs a spanking.
No way.
Yes. Eventually,
just give them a spanking.
Yeah, they told the Japanese embassy they were doing it as a prank. That's a funny ha-ha, chuckle for 2 weeks. Yeah, that worked out well. Doing it for the Instagram. Nicely done there,
Yeah,
guys.
a reminder that those countries, China, North Korea, don't mess around.
Yeah, they don't play around. You don't have the same kind of rates you do. Yeah, there's a guy in Africa that we'd highlighted. He's going on trial right now he's an Instagram, influencer, and he went around dumping out people's food at restaurants. That's a serious charge in that country. He's facing long prison sentences, and he thought he was just being funny. Ha 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 ha. Clank. There goes the door. Okay. Now, Blake Olson, sir. Old school is cool. Fooling death or your privacy is an illusion.
Oh, you got to go with old school is cool.
Yes, old school is cool. Here we are staying in the region of Asia for Miss Park Min-ha, 28. Reading has always been her hobby, but in the wake of Han Kang's historic Nobel Prize in Literature last year, she has taken up a new interest, handwriting. And she's hardly alone. There's a new habit called pilsa in South Korea that is taking the country by storm. What's happening is it's an enthusiasm for handwriting passages out of books. And even a very popular left-handed pitcher for the Kia Tigers has been seen doing this in his off days. He said it's a great way to relax his overworked pitching hand and helps him center himself. There actually is an entire trend and a wide range of genres of books that compile famous quotes of the philosophical writings, but they only print the copy on one side of the page so you can handwrite the copy on the other side. And these books are in the top 20 sales in South Korea right now. All to practice handwriting.
That is great.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
What a great sign.
Yeah, I think that was
Hopefully
really cool.
That'll come here.
Yeah, I always keep teaching my kids that, if us older people wanted to take over the world, we'd just write everything in cursive.
Yeah, that's right.
They would have no idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I still remember one of my kids when they were younger, and my mom had written something to them inside the card, and they opened it up, and I said, "What Grandma say?" And I said, "I don't know. I think she wrote it in French." Like, that's cursive. that's cursive.
Yeah, my mom did the same thing. The kids said the exact same thing.
Yes.
That's great. I love it.
Final choice this morning, Jeff. Fooling death or your privacy is an illusion.
Fooling death, please.
Yes. Fooling death in a groundbreaking moment. Easy for me to say. Rewind, sir. We'll start at the beginning. In a groundbreaking moment for cancer, Chinese researchers believe they have fooled our immune response provoked by organ transplants and have fooled the body into thinking the cancer is actually pork. Tumor to pork strategy has been published recently, and the idea is it tricks the tumor into thinking that it's actually pork, and the body's immune system then attacks the cancer and does away with it. Yes, when you import when you bring in pig, parts.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and your immune system attacks them. They're using that trigger system to fight cancer.
Huh. So cool.
Yeah.
Great work, Bill.
All right,
You're
that's
listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is KNUS.
7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Thursday, March 20th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. I should say it, Jeff, Bill, and Blake. Because Blake is, I mean, I'm going to have to change the name here.
Well, the thing for me is that we got to at least spread the blame around. I'm just saying this gives us more people to blame on this whole thing. So when things go
Blake
sideways.
Is so fun. It's and I credit Kelly for bringing him in because I love the news and analysis Blake Olson does.
Yeah. So one thing that as soon as when Kelly and I were talking about it, he's like, but Blake has no experience actually being a newscaster. I'm like, he's my guy. I swear. That is one of the reasons.
Blake was on Channel 9 for a while.
That was sports.
Yeah,
not
he did
news.
Sports.
Yes, I didn't want someone to come in here. And when we were talking about it, I didn't want a regular newsreader. I wanted someone that was going to do different things. And Blake understands the biz enough to know about the presentation, but he's not a news person. And the reason is, okay, we're going to pull the curtain back a little bit. When we're talking about putting the show together, I really did not want someone to come in and be a traditional newsreader because our competition does that. Every other place that does things similar to what we do does news at the top of the hour, and they do it straight. I'm not going to. I'm not coming into and I'm not going to come into if I'm going to come into a neighborhood with a restaurant, I'm not going to try to make a better burger or a McDonald's Big Mac. I'm not going to do that. I'll let you make the Big Mac. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to make sure that what we offer you is going to be a different choice because I'm not going to try to compete with the big fast food chain of iHeart. Don't care. Not going to. That's not a winning formula. So we are going to do it differently. We're going to offer things different. And when Blake wasn't a news person but did sports, hell yeah. Absolutely. Because he clicked all the boxes and then he didn't click the most important one, which was newsreader, which is fantastic.
Being a boring news guy.
Yeah, I know. That's why we love him.
Doesn't check that box.
No,
Speaking
not at all.
of Blake Olson.
Yes.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
I'm cracking up over here. 22, and as the sun rises, you guys are awesome. Feels like 17 degrees in Denver, expecting a high of 56 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, nearly 2,000 protesters, teachers at the state capitol today. Jeff will be there. Spending is the issue. Kristi Burton Brown, Colorado State Board of Education, on with Jeff and Billy last hour, and says they may be unhappy with the funding for education, but it has to do with the B word, budgeting by Democrats. Also an issue with employment in districts that were actually growing, but recently on the decline in enrollment. But the teachers are still there.
We don't want to just fire all these people. Give us like almost a grace period to be able to average out the student numbers instead of suddenly dropping off. Now, most conservatives would say, and most budget conscious people would say, if you don't have the student population, you obviously shouldn't have as many employees because you don't have as many kids to serve. So why are we over-employing people, especially on the admin side, when the student population doesn't matter?
And Governor Polis sounds like he's a fan of the Jeff and Bill show or something, with a memo to the teachers. He thinks they should be teaching and get back to work instead of protesting. Imagine that. Wow, what the heck? DJT is expected to sign an executive order today that would shut down the Department of Education. Trump will sign the order at a White House ceremony attended by Republican governors. The U.S. is asking for Ukraine's largest power plant as part of a ceasefire deal with Russia. Ukrainian leader Zelensky says he talked to Trump about one power plant, which is under Russian occupation. The nuclear power station is the largest in Europe. Authorities say 2 men escaped from an ICE facility in Aurora earlier this week. The 2 men reportedly escaped from the Denver contract detention facility on Tuesday when a power outage caused a door to unlock. 32-year-old Joel Jose Gonzalez was G2, arrested last month in Adams County. 24-year-old Guyland Vito Romero was arrested last month in Douglas County. ICE says that the search for the two men is continuing. Caroline Levitt discussing the criminals who are doxing Tesla owners and trying to intimidate anyone who owns a Tesla and who supports Elon. These people are unhinged.
We certainly think it's despicable, the violence that has taken place against Tesla, the company, its employees, and also just Americans who have chosen to drive an electric vehicle. Many of them are Democrats, by the way. Democrats were big supporters of Tesla and of electric vehicles until Elon Musk decided to vote for Donald Trump. So we would like Democrats to also come out and condemn this heinous violence that we have seen. And I believe the Attorney General has said she's investigating these incidents as acts of domestic violence. Greenpeace is being ordered to pay $660 million to a Texas company over its involvement in the Dakota pipeline protests. Remember those? A jury at a civil trial in North Dakota on Wednesday decided the environmental group is liable for orchestrating criminal behavior at the protests held nearly 10 years ago on the Standing Rock Reservation. The Federal Reserve is holding interest rates steady. Chair Jerome Powell said the Fed is focusing on achieving maximum employment and stable prices. The central bank forecasts that 2 rate cuts will come later this year. More fallout from the JFK files that were released. About a third of them are probably gone forever, destroyed. General Mike Flynn.
I want people to understand that this is not a mistake, okay? This was an egregious crime committed against the American people, committed against our government, committed against a president, committed against our Constitution. And to this day, no one has been held accountable that actually really did in fact.
Yes, it did. The NCAA tournament tips off today, one regional in Denver at Ball Arena, and it all starts this morning with Wisconsin and Montana, and then BYU and VCU at 11:30 and 2:05. The Wisconsin-Montana game at 11:30 and 2:05 with BYU and VCU, and then Yale and Texas A&M, Gig'em, and UCSD and Michigan tonight. The Lakers beat the Nuggets last night, and the Maple Leafs beat the Avs. 19 in Centennial, 20 in Westminster, 22 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
Just want to say, can we please keep the chatter to a minimum? I'm one of the people who's very, very prone to sensory overload. There's a lot of whispering and chatter going on. It's making it very difficult for me to focus. Please, can we just, I know we're all fresh and ready to go, but can we please just keep the chatter to a minimum? It's affecting my ability to focus. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade.
Is that a lawmaker in Colorado? It sounds like a Democrat lawmaker, doesn't it?
That is literally those communists in Northern California. I don't know if you've ever seen that
I
video.
have. They can't
so
even get
good.
the meeting started because there's so many objections.
Yeah, it's so great, man.
The pronouns you use are not correct. And then the sensory overload, they just keep...
Call each other comrade. God. And he, she, I identify as this. Man,
I mean, Blake, it's so easy. You go down to the state capitol, and it's fun to watch my friends who have gotten into politics more and more, and now they're like volunteering and kind of working down at the state capitol as aides, and they're walking out going, like, there's like stunned look in their eyes, and they're like, we're literally governed by the dumbest people our society's found. And I'm like, yes, no, you could... And I ran lobbying teams. I know this. You could pick somebody off the street, just a random person. Be like, I want you to sit here and run this meeting, and they would do a better job than what we have down there. Our Colorado has found the dumbest people and put them into the leadership of our state.
Frightening.
Yeah.
Come on, let's get it back. Let's go. Come
there
on,
we go.
Republicans. Let's go. Blake Olson, News Talk, 710 KNUS.
Weather, sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free, no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Partly cloudy, still a little breezy, mild, upper 50s, near 30 tonight, upper 50s Friday. The weekend will be in the 50s and lower 60s, a little bit breezy. Slight chance Saturday for a few showers. A warming trend Monday and Tuesday. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I want to take a moment to chat with you about Wound Care Associates of Colorado, new advertiser to this show, and going to have a brand new client later on today. Yes, a member of the Thorpe clan has a persistent, slow healing cut that needs attention. So we are going to see Wound Care Associates of Colorado later on today. Let me tell you about them. You or someone in your family has a slow healing cut, diabetic ulcer, pressure sore. It may seem like it's not a big deal, but it can turn into a very big deal. A few years ago in my family, my aunt had a chronic wound on her leg. The wound care facility she was seeing was maintaining the wound. That's common in this space. And that means they clean it and try to make sure that no infection develops. But the one thing they don't do is promote healing. They keep that highway for the dirt, germs, and bacteria to get into your body open. Seems a little weird. I mean, if you had a bridge that was out, you'd want to repair the bridge. If you had a broken arm, you'd probably want the bones to knit back together. But with some wound care facilities, they just want to keep that open wound on your body. Odd choice. I don't think that ignoring the problem fixes the problem. You're probably not the person that puts the black electrical tape over the check engine light on the car dashboard, are you? No, you're probably not. That's why ignoring the wound can become a very big deal, because as we talk about, that torn skin and tissue can let the dirt, germs, and bacteria enter your body. It became a big deal for my aunt. Maintaining that wound allowed MRSA to attack her, and she spent numerous days, weeks, and even up to a month plus inside the hospital dealing with the problems of MRSA, not because of the original problem, which was the chronic wound. Wound Care Associates of Colorado dealt with the same thing Jennifer Walker had in her life. She lost an uncle to a very similar situation, so she said, this isn't going to happen to anybody else. I'm going to make sure that everyone out there can get taken care of in the way they should be taken care of. Wound Care Associates of Colorado, check them out at coloradowound.com, because they are an old school concierge style medical service. Their wound certified nurse practitioner will come to your home to provide custom treatment. Yes, no traveling, no getting to the office, nothing like that. You show up and you tell them, hey, I need you to come over this date. This is what we need. They come to your house. They set up a personalized treatment plan that is focused on promoting faster healing. They want to fix the problem, not maintain the problem. So they're game changers in this space. One, they're doing the house calls. Two, they want to make sure that your slow healing cut, your diabetic ulcer, your pressure sore is healing, and it doesn't allow the dirt, germs, and bacteria access to your body. One of the members of my family is going to be seeing them later on today. I will update you on it as we go forward. But again, reach out to them today, coloradowound.com. coloradowound.com. Do not mess around with this. That slow healing cut, that diabetic ulcer, that pressure sore seems like a little deal, can turn into a very big deal. I've had the experience in my life. Contact them today, coloradowound.com, coloradowound.com. And when you do, tell me you heard about them here on the Jeff and Bill Show, because it helps us out. Thanks. Back to you, Jeff.
That's great to hear, Bill. All right. In a minute, we're going to talk with Dave Williams, chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, in light of this headline coming from the Gazette. Colorado GOP moves annual fundraising dinner featuring Steve Bannon after Colorado Springs Hotel cancels the event. The Colorado Republican Party was left scrambling, they say, looking for a new location for its annual fundraising dinner after the Antlers in downtown Colorado Springs on Monday abruptly canceled the March 28th event featuring keynote speaker Steve Bannon, a top Trump advisor, in response to an online uproar the party blamed on radical leftists. By Tuesday evening, party officials said they secured a new location and anticipated the dinner would take place at the former Boot Barn Hall in Colorado Springs, a spacious country western music venue that frequently hosts GOP gatherings and recently changed its official name to the Phil Long Music Hall. I've been there. Beautiful, actually, wonderful facility. I think this has actually worked out better for the state party. In a social media post earlier Tuesday, the party blamed the Antlers cancellation on a social media campaign launched by far-left activists. Antifa, the Denver Democrat Socialists of America, and other radical Democrats are trying desperately to disrupt and cancel our event, but we won't let them, read the Post, which went on to promise that the event would remain in Colorado Springs with an unchanged roster of speakers. The dinner event will move forward with Steve Bannon, the party stated. Event organizers originally planned to hold the dinner at a hotel in the Denver Tech Center, but announced in early March that the party's annual Centennial Dinner, which would be held at the historic hotel, a venue that has been host to GOP gatherings in recent years, including the El Paso County Republicans' Lincoln Day Dinner. Online protesters claimed victory, declaring that they had chased the event from Denver and forced organizers to move it again from the Antlers. Attempts to reach management at the Antlers, part of the Wyndham Hotels and Resorts groups owned by John Goad, were unsuccessful as of Tuesday evening. An architect of Donald Trump's 2016 campaign for president, longtime host of the Steve Bannon's War Room podcast, Bannon pled guilty in February in New York to a state fraud charge as part of a deal to avoid jail time. The charges stem from a multi-million-dollar fundraising effort to build a wall along the country's southern border. Bannon was pardoned on federal charges by President Trump near the end of the Republicans' first administration. Outcry against the Antlers event was spearheaded in part by Colorado Springs social activist and business owner James Proby, and driven by online posts accusing the Antlers of hosting a white supremacy gathering. Bannon has denied being a white nationalist, instead casting himself in a 2016 Wall Street Journal interview as an economic nationalist. He served a 4-month sentence in federal prison in 2024 for contempt of Congress for refusing to cooperate with a congressional investigation into the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. I saw Bannon speak at CPAC. I thought it was one of the more powerful speeches out of everybody there. I think it's fantastic that the state party has brought him to be a speaker here. He's energizing. He's exciting. The idea that he somehow gave a Nazi salute at CPAC, I was in the room. It's not a Nazi salute. He's literally waving to people, going back and forth. And then, of course, Channel 9 and Kyle Clark run out there. He gave a Nazi salute. He did not. He gave a great speech, calling people to patriotism and loving this country, serving this country. And I think he's going to fire up Colorado Republicans. I think what Dave Williams did, bringing him, was fantastic. I think they're going to have probably a sold-out crowd. It'll be a lot of fun. But this is kind of what the left did. They did this to us at the Western Conservative Summit. Year after year, they'd call and try to organize. And I remember one time we had protests just about every year. But the witches came down to protest us. The communists came down to protest us. We would host Jack Phillips, like the little Lakewood baker. And they would bake rainbow cakes and throw it at the hotel. They're just lunatics. The hotels should not bow down to these types of people. Security, when we had Antifa one year come and protest us, and Denver SWAT did a great job protecting everybody there, all the students that were there. I'm giving a little insight here, but the police, they don't think too highly of these people. And in fact, a lot of the police organizations have infiltrated these groups, so they know ahead of time what they're going to do. And they were like, we can literally shine a little shiny object over in one location, and they'll all run over there to protest, and then we'll just sneak everybody out a side room. They're not the brightest people to deal with, and we were able to get our students back to CCU, all that stuff. Totally fine, no problem. But they shouldn't have moved these events.
Now,
You can't bow down to
Be
these
careful
people.
saying that the police have infiltrated these groups and everything, because then soon someone will invent a conspiracy theory that the police are actually directing the groups to go and do these things, that they're involved, that they're, maybe they're unidentified human sources, and they're actually the ones involved for these protests. If anything gets out of hand or, someone breaks into a building, they'll say, those people, those police officers, those undercover agents, they were actually there doing the dirty work. So be careful. That could easily, I could see how someone might come to that conclusion.
If there's videos of them opening the doors and welcoming people in, I can understand why they might get there.
No, but I think those were the people that were wearing the uniforms. But again, that's because of what you do in the riot situation. Because on the other side of the building, people were being beat up. But, that's okay. That may be the issue. And I can see the hotels have to, in many ways, do this because it's not necessarily about the protest per se. And it's not about the gathering there in the gathering space because they are not a convention center. They're a hotel. And it would be like when we showed up out for the Gateway of the Rockies for the Donald Trump rally, where there were a whole bunch of people that had scheduled their conference and their other things months beforehand and made travel. And now all of a sudden, all these people are around. And that's why they cancel these dates, is because if the average customer and consumer has problems and feels unsafe getting in and out of the building for whatever reason, that's why they push back on this.
That the Republicans got to pay the price then?
I think everybody does, more or less.
These are the lefty lunatics.
I know. But the thing is, we can get to lunatics on all sides doing crazy things. So I just think this is why this is happening. I'm not saying I'm not endorsing it.
I don't see the right protesting Bernie Sanders tomorrow.
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to go back and look. I mean, there are a number of
organizing on Reddit the same way the left are.
Yeah, but there are a number of but there are lots of organizations. There are times in which people that are conservative and liberal do things like this. And so I just think that it's sitting here and saying it's only these people that are doing it is not borne out necessarily by history. The idea of these actions, we can discuss them and critique them as necessary, but both sides engage in this kind of behavior. The thing that I thought was funny was going to the Boot Barn hall. Woo-hoo! Because the reason now, I know it's in Colorado Springs, but what it reminds me of is when this group that was not in charge at the time and was mad at Kristi Burton Brown held a similar protest in a Boot Barn parking lot.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're going to, now not the same space, because one is here in Denver and one's in Colorado Springs, but it's just,
and it's not their name anymore. It's the Phil Long Music Hall.
But there's a sense of irony inside of me when it's like, we can't go to the Antlers, we must go, to the Boot Barn. I just think that's funny. Again, that's a part of my head.
What do you think of the state party bringing in Steve Bannon?
Ooh. The thing is, for me, I don't think it draws more moths. I don't think it gains you any followers. Does it energize the base? Does 100%. It get everybody excited? Yes, absolutely it does. But what is the message to the larger electorate when this is the person that is getting the GOP excited? Because this is somewhat of a marketing issue. And we've talked about it here inside the state. The GOP's marketing message in trying to persuade these persuadable voters, I'm not sure that Steve Bannon is going to be the right marketing message in order to do this. It doesn't mean that it's going to kill their efforts as far as voter outreach, but not certain it's going to help. That's all I'm saying. Not certain that's going to help.
Text message 5453. The right doesn't need to protest Bernie Sanders. They know the Democrat Party will take him out for them.
Good point. Nicely done. Good point.
Well done. Look, a lot of these events are rah-rah to the most faithful in order to generate donations, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That is exactly what he delivers.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw it at CPAC. I mean, it was right at the heart. And it was like watching William Wallace, Mel Gibson in that movie Braveheart, right? Like sometimes you just, especially in Colorado, you need that type of motivation to go out there after what the left has done to destroy the state. That type of energy and excitement to go out there and fight politically for the right direction of the state. That is the right guy to deliver for that. So we're going to talk to Dave Williams here in just a few minutes. You're not going to want to miss this conversation. It's going to be a wild time down there at the Phil Long Music Hall.
Boot Barn. Just saying because it's funny. I just think it's funny. Again,
you don't shop at the Boot Barn, do you?
No, not for years.
Oh, I love the Boot Barn. Great.
Not for years and years.
Great event. Or a great company, store. Get all of your ranching needs there for at least the dress. You can't get hay.
Gotta send that over to the sales department.
Yeah, right. I'll promote Boot Barn.
I know you would. You do a great job at it too.
All right. Dave Williams is coming up. I want to talk to you first about my friend Dan Kaplis with Dan Kaplis Law. I've known Dan for well over a decade. Pro-life, pro-family, pro-faith, pro-America. That matters because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everybody involved in the case. Dan Caplis has dedicated 40 years of his life to helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. He's about people. He's about justice. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law is the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. That's how much he's trusted. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. He accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call. Here's the phone number, 303-770-5551. That's 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, CAPLISLaw.com. We'll continue with the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Did you say that on air?
No, I did not. In Jeff's ear, I went, "Hey, Boot Barn." Sorry.
Love the Boot Barn. Come
Yeah,
on. I think they advertise in the 6 o'clock hour.
Yeah, they
More
do,
advertisements from the Boot Barn.
Yes, we do.
Speaking, the former Boot Barn Hall in Colorado Springs is now going to be hosting the Steve Bannon State Party fundraiser that's coming up in a few weeks. And joining us to give us some insight into what happened with the left and their efforts. They're just all about cancel culture, which I find ironic that they're suing the Elizabeth School District to put pornographic books into kids' schools under the guise of free speech, but they want to stop Republicans from being able to host their gathering. But he's fighting through it. He joins us now, State Party Chairman Dave Williams. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
All right, so we gave folks some of the insight. It looks like you've had to move it around a few different times. You guys have landed at Phil Long Music Hall in Colorado Springs. Great location. Beautiful place, by the way. This will be a lot of fun coming up March 28th. Steve Bannon in Colorado Springs. Give us some insight into what's happened the last few weeks.
It's been quite the odyssey. This would be our third venue, and as you may have heard, we were canceled by Antifa, and it's not through anything they did legally or morally. They've been threatening all the venues, not only our attendees, but also the venues themselves and their staff. And it came to a head, a few days ago, I suppose, when the Antlers management gave us a call and said, "Hey, we can't do this," even though we had a signed contract. They had received threats from Antifa, the DSA here in Denver, which is the Democratic Socialists of America, if you didn't know, and just a lot of stuff going against their staff, their property, and even their ownership. Their ownership got doxxed on their online Reddit thread, and it became too much, and so they had to cancel on us, unfortunately, and we had to scramble and find another place. But thankfully, the Boot Barn out of Colorado Springs was able to accommodate us and help us proceed forward.
I mean, as somebody who's organized 8 years of a very large conservative gathering, this is something we went through every year. We never had anybody cancel on us. I mean, hotels we've been at, very nice hotels. We've been at the convention center. And for us, we just always worked with police to secure our attendees, which was always our top priority. We even had SWAT because one year Antifa decided to show up and protest us. But they seem to really push this at another level. Why? Is it Steve Bannon? Is it you? Is it the state party? What do you think really pushed Antifa to put so much energy behind trying to get this thing canceled?
I think it ultimately comes back to Trump derangement syndrome. I think they were really upset that we took back the country for righteousness and goodness and the American way. And when they heard that Steve Bannon was coming to town, they had to take out their frustration on our event because they have lost control, and they're losing more and more of that control in Colorado. So this is, I think we're in a lot of ways we're just sort of the collateral damage of what's going on nationally as these guys try to resist and figure out how to, harm Trump and his agenda. But we're not going to let them get away with it. We're going to continue forward. As I've told everyone on our team and members that this is no longer a fundraiser. We have a duty. We have a duty to march forward and allow for our membership to have an event where we have whatever speaker we want come express their ideas and their thoughts to our membership.
Well, and we're talking with the chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, Dave Williams. I actually think we're starting to see the bubblings up of a potential, reliving of the summer of 2020 and the BLM riots. You're seeing it on the Tesla cars, the burnings that are taking place there. We know that the radical left is unhinged when it comes to violence, the burning of things, burning businesses, attacking. They have no problem with that. And I think it's imperative on Trump, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, the whole FBI infrastructure to get this nipped, in the bud right away, because the left would, bring back, it's like a zombie movie return, the summer of 2020 again. Are you expecting that? Are you seeing that start to simmer up?
Well, we're obviously around the country. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, especially as Elon Musk, is doing his best to save our country. They're going after his businesses and engaging in physical harm towards property and others. But for this event, we're preparing. We're preparing for, hopefully preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. But we're going to have adequate security. We've already engaged good security firms as well as local law enforcement. And we are going to send all of this information that we've gathered about these threats against property and others. We're going to send it to the Department of Justice, because we sure as hell know that Phil Weiser probably isn't going to do anything for us, or at least not give it the attention it deserves. We're pretty upset about this, but we have resolve. We're not going to be intimidated by these people not to have our events, especially in a state like Colorado that needs to hear these ideas. Even if you don't like them, that's fine. The answer isn't intimidation. The answer isn't threats. The answer is go ahead and have a counter event. Go spread your ideas. The answer is free speech and more of it, not threats and intimidation.
We're talking with the chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, Dave Williams. Let's talk about the choice to bring Steve Bannon as an event organizer. I know the position you were in. You looked at the broad spectrum of potential conservative speakers you could have brought. You chose Steve Bannon. Give people some insight on that.
Yeah, you bet. Look, we sent invites to many different people, and this is sort of a tradition that we have in the party that, right before our reorganizational meeting, we try to have a fundraiser. And like any other fundraiser, we want to bring keynote speakers. And so we send invites out to, national politicians, to congressmen, to influential, prominent speakers. And that included Steve Bannon. And guess what? He was one of the people that got back to us saying, yep, my schedule's open. I can be available. And of course we took it, right? When you're trying to bring in speakers and one's available, you don't pass it up.
Well, and I saw him speak at CPAC. I think it was one of the top speeches at CPAC. Him, Tom Homan gave a great speech as well. And then you had Elon Musk and the silver chainsaw. So I was in the room and I saw the energy that Steve Bannon, it was like William Wallace on the fields of Falkirk, calling Republicans to continue to charge ahead and push their agenda politically. So I think that's what you're going to get. He's going to connect with the base. He's going to get people to open up their pocketbooks. I think it was a fine choice. And I've been a part of many of these events. I remember when we had Michael Reagan that Ryan Call brought in for a great event, and that was a fun evening. This is a great opportunity for Republicans to get organized, inspired, and then activated to go out there and to get some victories, because right now the state is run by Democrats. If you're frustrated with the direction, and we're going to go down to the protests later today, that the teachers, 2,000 teachers down at the state capitol protesting Jared Polis, and Republicans are just kind of like watching this happen, right? I want to ask you, the state legislature, and you were a member there, faces a $1.2 billion shortfall right now. This is Democrat made. This is Democrat owned. And Republicans are just watching this because we don't have any control. Tell us what you think is going to happen, where the cut's going to come in this $1.2 billion shortfall.
It's a good question. One of the unique things about my time there is that we weren't really engaged. We didn't have shortfalls, quote, to worry about. So it was always, spend more. And it was one of the few legislators that voted no on the budget. I was more than happy to always advocate, look, we're spending too much. This is all going to come to a head. Eventually, the music will stop. I think what's going to happen is they're going to have to make certainly tough cuts, but they're going to try and cut it on essential items, not on their pet projects, right? You're going to see less money for public safety, less money for infrastructure, less money, for the actual services that might benefit Coloradans. And instead, they're going to put it towards furniture, office furniture, right? We read about that. it's crazy town right now, and I don't think there should be any Republican in there that has any doubt on what they need to do on the budget. When that hits their desk, they need to be all voting no in unison. That's all Republicans in the House and all Republicans in the Senate. That hasn't always happened, but if there was a time, it's now. We need to be unified, and we need to show the people of Colorado that this is not our problem, it's their problem. They need to tighten their belts like every other American and every other Coloradan here.
That's the chairman of the Colorado GOP, Dave Williams, on the Jeff and Bill Show Live. We are talking about the fact that the Colorado GOP has had to move an event featuring Steve Bannon on their third venue. They've moved it twice because of protests, because of activists making threats and a whole bunch of other things. So they finally settled on the new Phil Lawn, used to be the Boot Barn event space in Colorado Springs. It sucks that they've had to move venues twice. That creates all sorts of headaches. I disagree with the protesters are getting so violent, but what I want to talk to Dave about is ask a little bit follow up on what Jeff was just speaking of, about trying to persuade more voters in Colorado to vote for the R's, not the D's. What I want to know, Dave, is I know Steve Bannon is going to help you raise money, but is he going to help you persuade any voters? That may not be the focus of this particular event. This is more of a fundraiser. But what about the branding and the larger impression of the GOP? Does Steve Bannon potentially increase or decrease your share of votes in the state, do you feel?
Well, I ultimately think he's going to be a net positive for our party and our brand, not only financially, but also philosophically and helping us to understand the voting population generally. I mean, people have to understand that Steve Bannon, yes, he's a provocative individual, but he's also, he also knew what was coming back in 2016. He knew that this populist movement was something that we needed to tap into in order to defeat the Democrats and put forward better candidates within the Republican Party. So, I would tell people that, look, just because you may disagree with how he presents himself or his tone, his ideas have actually led to, I think, where we're at within the Republican Party. We're a brand new Republican Party, and that's ultimately for the better. And I think it's going to be a great event where if people just listen to what he has to say, it's going to make a lot of sense, and it's certainly going to affect elections down the road.
That's a good point, but can it resonate in Colorado? And the only reason I'm pushing back is if we go back to the electoral map, Colorado ended up being an island of blue surrounded by red. I agree with you on the messaging as far as Steve Bannon, and I think he is a wonderful orator. I don't necessarily agree with him on politics, but as far as his presentation and the way that he thinks, yeah, I can get down with that. I think he does a really good job, and I think he's very persuasive. But given that Colorado was the one real Western state that kind of bucked the trend of leaning closer to Donald Trump, how does that work out with Steve Bannon? I'm just kind of wondering, can you sell the message here when it looked like the last sea change we saw in the previous election didn't necessarily hit the shores of Colorado?
Well, look, Colorado did shift right, maybe not as much as we all would have liked or hoped, but that's primarily a function, I think, of just how Democrats have organized and been well-financed compared to our side. You got to remember, for the past 20 years, you've had, we all pick on Jared Polis, but there have been a lot of other fine Democratic funders who have built up an operation that's pretty hard to overcome, especially when you're in the minority. I think ultimately what you're going to see in Colorado is if you give it maybe, 2 or 3 more election cycles and everyone living under the consequences of the bad policies that Democrats pass, the people of Colorado are going to wake up and realize, hey, we got to do something different. And they're already doing that. So I'm not sure if the two are necessarily connected with respect to branding. I think where we're at as a state is because you got to hand it to the Democrats. They've really took advantage of the system. And when you factor in their ability to ballot harvest and campaign and organize and be well-financed, I think that's more of the story.
We're talking with Dave Williams, chairman of the Colorado Republican Party. All right, the event coming up March 28th, Steve Bannon, Colorado Springs, Phil Long Music Hall. Are tickets still available?
Yeah, they're still available. Please go to our website at cologop.org and purchase some tickets. Again, this is not just about a fundraiser now. This is about, making sure that we can't be intimidated here in Colorado. We believe in the free expression of ideas and engaging in the marketplace of thought. So help us out. We can't let Antifa win and intimidate people into being silent.
And I want to encourage folks, when I've hosted events like this, even though we had national protests, like when we brought Donald Trump himself in 2016, they took over the entire square outside of the convention center with protests. And then when I've brought Donald Trump Jr., Charlie Kirk, even Jack Phillips, we had Andy Ngo one time. I've dealt with these folks, these protesters, and I'll say a few things. One, I remember we had the Denver witches, the communists, and the socialists, and Antifa all protesting us. And I remember saying to our donors and funders, if these are the people turning out against us, that means we're doing it right? We're over the target. If these are the people that are turning out against us, that's what Dave Williams and the Colorado Republican Party are seeing. That means that they are sending the right message because the right people are scared of what they're trying to say. And then secondly, and this is probably most important, all right, the people that protect us, law enforcement, security, they do a fantastic job. They're highly professional. They will keep us safe. It's important to not be intimidated by these communist protesters, these witches. Go out there, support the Republican Party. Do not be intimidated. Know that the blue has your back. They'll keep you safe. Dave Williams, thanks so much for taking time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks for the time.
You bet. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Jeff.
We'll continue. Phone lines are open.
Yeah.
If you'd like to join the conversation, 303-696-1971. Do you think Steve Bannon's the right guy to speak? Is there somebody else? Do you want to see a Nikki Haley?
Yeah.
Would you buy a ticket if it was a Nikki Haley?
It's a difficult balance because I do believe that Steve Bannon will raise piles and piles of cash.
Yep.
But I don't think Steve Bannon is persuadable to the disaffected voters that the GOP needs. He's not going to persuade any hardcore Dems, but there are a lot of disaffected independents and unaffiliated, people that for one reason or another left either party and, like I do, feel homeless. Now, we are not, we don't march, in all one direction. We're amorphous. And I don't know. I'm curious to see if Steve Bannon's appearance is persuadable, but that also may not necessarily be the function of this. This may just be about getting the checkbook.
Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Text us at 720-819-5115. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Great interview with Dave Williams on the upcoming Steve Bannon State Party fundraiser they're having on March 28th. I will say this as a journeyman through the Republican Party, and I just don't really like to get involved with the Civil War stuff. Never have. Worked for Mitt Romney, worked for Ryan Call's State Party. The meetings after the 2012 loss were all about we are two country club Republican. We need to appeal to blue collar Republicans. And I will tell you, Donald Trump and Steve Bannon delivered that exact sentiment. He delivered it. The Republican Party is now blue collar. And I saw a recent poll, Bill, that this was on CNN, that really the Democrat Party at this point is made up of college-educated white women. That's the dominant force within the Democrat Party right now. So parties shift, they adjust, but Steve Bannon delivered on what we were all trying to do in 2012, was make the Republican Party appeal to blue collar. So we'll have to follow that. March 28th, tickets still available, cologop.org. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Thursday, March 20th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Luke Niforatos, Executive Vice President of Smart Approaches to Marijuana, is going to join us just after the news. Big article in the Wall Street Journal, the rise and fall of the Napa Valley of Cannabis. Pueblo, Colorado had high hopes for a legal marijuana boom. Financial troubles now plague the industry. What happened? We were going to pave streets with gold. Every elementary school is going to be rebuilt with all the marijuana tax dollars. Now you have a $1.2 billion shortfall of the budget, rise in homelessness, crime. What happened? Well, Smart Approaches to Marijuana is going to give us some insight. But first, Blake Olson with the news.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
26 and cloudy outside. Feels like 20 degrees in Denver. Expecting a high of 56 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang says his company is set to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on chips and other electronics manufactured in America over the next 4 years. That's according to an interview Huang gave to the Financial Times. In it, he also said NVIDIA is now able to produce its most advanced systems in the U.S., partnering with Taiwan Semiconductor and Fox.
And that's the DJT effect. Big business coming in can only help the economy. Manufacturing is returning. And HHS Director RFK Jr. telling the food industry this week that we have to get rid of all those dyes, and launched a review of the GRAS standards, generally recognized as safe standards in food. He was on this morning on Fox.
That's why we have 10,000 ingredients in our food in this country. In Europe, they only have 400. And we have the worst chronic disease burden of any country in the world. So we are going to get rid of the GRAS standards for new products. We're going to go back and review all of these old ingredients to make sure that they are safe. And we're going to encourage these companies to get rid of them as quickly as possible.
Colorado GOP Chair Dave Williams on the show last hour. The bullies, the nut jobs, the criminals from Antifa and socialists in Denver intimidated the Antlers Hotel in the Springs, and they said they couldn't host the GOP event with Speaker Steve Bannon.
I think it ultimately comes back to Trump derangement syndrome. I think they were really upset that we took back the country for righteousness and goodness and the American way. And when they heard that Steve Bannon was coming to town, they had to take out their frustration on our event because they have lost control. And they're losing more and more of that control in Colorado.
They have a new site, Phil Long Music Hall, but once again, the commies have been a pain in the arse, but the Patriots will not back down. Nearly 2,000 teachers, protesters will be at the state capitol today. Jeff will be there. Spending on education will be the issue. Kristi Burton Brown, Colorado State Board of Education, on with Jeff and Billy a couple of hours ago, and says that they may be unhappy with the funding for education, but it really has to do with the B word, budgeting by Democrats. Also an issue with employment in districts that are smaller now and don't need the teachers, but they're still in districts like Cherry Creek and St. Vrain Valley.
We don't want to just fire all these people. Give us like almost a grace period to be able to average out the student numbers instead of suddenly dropping off. Now, most conservatives would say, and most budget conscious people would say, if you don't have the student population, you obviously shouldn't have as many employees because you don't have as many kids to serve. So why are we over-employing people, especially on the admin side, when the student population doesn't matter?
And Governor Polis with a memo to the teachers. He thinks they should get back in the classroom and go to work instead of protesting. Is hell freezing over? What's going on? DJT expected to sign an executive order today that would shut down the Department of Education. Trump will sign the order at a White House ceremony attended by Republican governors. The Social Security Administration is now requiring in-office visits to verify identity. The SSA website says that to start a benefits claim, an individual's identity must be confirmed in person. Previously, people could have done so over the phone. The mayor of one town in Canada is calling for all U.S. flags to be removed from the city properties. Mayor Mike Bradley of Sarnia, Ontario, says the economic impact of the trade war is going to be devastating. Maybe they should just drop all the tariffs. And that many of the town's residents are also concerned about Trump repeatedly calling Canada the 51st state. Hey, speaking of flags, this lady upset that the rainbow flag doesn't fly, but the POW flag does in a town in Washington in June. Mayor is not happy.
Your approach to trying to trick people out of having to fly the pride flag in June by making sure that the POW MIA flag was flown is really disgusting. And again, it's not impartial in any way. And I think that you should be ashamed. I definitely am.
It's not common that I respond to public comment, but I will not sit here and have somebody tell me that veterans are a political stunt. How dare you? This country was founded because veterans lost their lives. Hundreds of thousands of people died for this country so that you could fly your pride flag. And man, I am pissed. I'm sorry. This is out of line, and perhaps my council members will censure me for this, but do not ever disparage veterans in my presence.
Amen. Authorities say 2 men escaped from an ICE facility in Aurora earlier this week. The 2 men reportedly escaped from the Denver contract detention facility on Tuesday when a power outage caused a door to unlock. 32-year-old Joel Jose Gonzalez was arrested last month in Adams County. 24-year-old Guylan Vito Romero was arrested last month in Douglas County. ICE says the search for the 2 men is continuing. The NCAA tournament tips off today in Denver. One regional here in the Mile High City at Ball Arena this morning. Wisconsin and Montera, BYU and VCU all starts at 11:30, and then Yale, Texas A&M, and UC San Diego and Michigan tonight. The Lakers beat the Nuggets last night, and the Leafs over the Avs, 24 in Englewood, 25 in Brighton, 26 in Denver. Luke is coming up with Jeff and Billy as they continue.
Very brief point of information. If you are using a microphone, talk into it directly like I am right now, and do not wave your face back and forth because people cannot hear you. That is all.
Okay.
Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
But I always wave my face. Oh, well. Dang. I don't know what to do now.
Stop waving your face.
Yeah, stop waving your face.
What's wrong with you?
Yes.
You're
Some
in
people's
radio.
children. I
Comrade.
Tell ya. Have a good one.
Weather, sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free, no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Partly cloudy, still a little breezy, mild, upper 50s, near 30 tonight, upper 50s Friday. The weekend will be in the 50s and lower 60s, a little bit breezy. Slight chance Saturday for a few showers. A warming trend Monday and Tuesday. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Well, you expect the Wall Street Journal to write about all the great revenue coming in from the marijuana industry here in Colorado. Not the case anymore. The Wall Street Journal, big article, the rise and fall of the Napa Valley of cannabis. Pueblo, Colorado, had high hopes for a legal marijuana boom. Financial troubles now plague the city. The chief of police even saying our community is just frankly getting tired of it. And I don't think it's just here in Pueblo. Lots of reasons why it's failing in Colorado. And to give us some insight, Luke Niforatos, Executive Vice President of Smart Approaches to Marijuana, joins us. Good morning, Luke. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks.
Good morning, Jeff and Bill. Thanks for having me on, as always. And shout out to my buddy Blake. I mean, does anybody do the news better than that guy? I mean, you got to listen to every single word.
It is fun. It is. We are grateful to have Blake. So, Luke, you've been tracking the marijuana commercial industry in Colorado since its inception. Wall Street Journal, not a flattering article. I think people are waking up to the failure that this industry is, but give some folks some insight from your perspective.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think a lot of people, they think that Colorado's just making all this money off of legal weed. And they're just stunned when they find out that when you look at the percentage of marijuana tax revenue in this state versus our, annual budgeted revenues, it's less than 1% of our state tax revenue is coming from the marijuana industry. So we have been making pennies on the dollar for a number of years, and I think communities are getting really sick of it. When you look back to Amendment 64 and all the promises, they said we were going to have, basically golden textbooks at every desk for every student in this state. They said we were going to fund education, all these other initiatives, all these pipe dreams, frankly, were going to be funded. And now none of that is the case. And, this story in the Wall Street Journal, I think, was really insightful because you have the chief of police talking about literally homeless encampments of hundreds of people from other states who still to this day, Jeff, are living in under bridges and out in the open. They're only for the marijuana. They are marijuana tourist homeless folks, not the types of people you want brought to your community. That's what we were worried about when we opposed this back, 10 years ago. And unfortunately, everything we warned about is coming true.
We're talking with Luke Niforatos with Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Luke, I've talked to law enforcement from Utah, Nebraska, Kansas, who said that the legalization and the commercialization of marijuana in Colorado was great for their communities because all the people that wanted to use marijuana kind of unharassed moved here. Well, the people that are regular consumers of marijuana, not necessarily the best go-getters out there, so we drew those types of people to our communities from surrounding states, made their communities safer, and made ours worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, there was this kind of a misnomer out there that marijuana was no big deal and, it's, not as bad as alcohol, all the different things that we've heard. But, the difference between marijuana and alcohol is that marijuana really adversely impacts your mental health, especially this new supercharged, highly potent marijuana that's being sold now. I mean, when we were voting on marijuana, I guess now 11 years ago or 12 years ago or so here in Colorado, the marijuana we were voting on was, 10% potency of the THC that gets you high. Now it's 99% potent because they're literally in chemical labs cooking up brand new creations that are not organic, not natural, not the way this plant ever was in a state of nature, if you will. And so it's totally wrecking people's minds. And, I think a lot of people are saying, well, it's not really a big deal if my, neighbor wants to smoke every now and again. But, there's some recent data from our federal surveys that just came out a few months ago that found that more than half of all the people in Colorado who use marijuana are using it every single day. So we're talking about, close to 1 million Coloradans at this point who are using marijuana very heavily, almost every single day. Most of them qualify for cannabis use disorder, which is marijuana addiction. Yes, marijuana is addictive, folks. You can become very addicted to this drug now because of how potent it is. And so you have a very heavy level of use. And with all the connections we're finding with marijuana use and psychosis and schizophrenia, that is only exacerbating, I think, our mental health crisis here in the state of Colorado and in other states as well.
We're talking with Luke Niforatos, Executive Vice President of Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Luke, part of the challenge that Pueblo faced was This is a plant you can grow in your backyard. And so all the regulatory infrastructure that came with commercialized marijuana had to compete with a product that can be grown in the backyard and doesn't follow the regulatory process. Tell us about how the black market has undercut commercialized marijuana.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. When I saw the headline in the Wall Street Journal that described Pueblo as the Silicon Valley of cannabis, I cackled. And I think everyone who knows what's going on here probably cackled with me, okay? And I'm not that old, so it wasn't even that great of a cackle. But listen, it is crazy to me that they ever thought that this was going to be a boon for communities like Pueblo. I mean, for those of us who know what's going on down there, they are crawling with cartels. They are crawling with these illegal gangs. Their chief of police is talking about it in the article. It's never been worse. You know, people thought, well, we're going to legalize and regulate it. That was actually one of the biggest selling points was, you know, let's get rid of the dealers and the cartels. They'll all go away and, I don't know, become dentists or, you know, work in the federal government or something. Nope, that didn't happen. These people kept dealing marijuana on the streets. They kept doing their illegal activities as they always do. So legalization didn't eliminate them. In fact, the dealers have never been better, particularly in Pueblo. And you look at the illegal sales going on. Of course, you know, in this article in the Wall Street Journal, you have these industry, you know, experts. You know, we always love to see the experts weighing in on these news stories. You know, the industry experts are saying, well, it's because the taxes are so bad in Colorado. Well, that's what they say everywhere. I mean, you wouldn't be an industry in this country if you weren't saying we need to have lower taxes and less regulations. And you know what? I'm all for that kind of a thing if it's for something that actually makes society a better place. But when you're selling drugs that are getting our kids hooked, when you're using candies, cookies, ice creams, et cetera, you know, clearly marketing these products to kids, I don't want you having lower taxes. And not only that, if we continue to lower the taxes, well, the industry could never compete with the black market. The black market will never pay taxes. They will always be cheaper to sell and buy on the black market. So this idea that we're going to eventually reach a place where the legal market can compete with the dealers, it's not going to happen. And the industry is going to continue to try to get lower taxes. And lower taxes on the industry means less tax revenue to deal with all of the costs to society, like, I don't know, all the dealers and gangs and cartels that are exploding in places like Pueblo. How are they going to fund law enforcement to deal with these issues when you have this rapid expansion of the use of marijuana and the addiction to marijuana, and yet the legal industry just is totally incapable of competing?
We're talking with Luke Niforatos. He's Executive Vice President of Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Luke, do you think Colorado is turning a corner on this, or at least nationally? When I ran the Centennial Institute and we were looking at this issue and trying to combat it, host debates about all this, it felt oftentimes like a train that we couldn't stop. But it seems like a lot of states, Florida, for instance, recently, are looking at this going, guys, it's not like Colorado and California and Oregon are doing that well right now. Maybe we shouldn't embrace drug commercialization. Your thoughts on the legalization trend?
Yeah, I think, well, clearly nationally, the trend is against legalization. I mean, there was a giant story in Reuters yesterday that was tracking all the things that are happening in different states. You have states that are moving to pare down, to roll back the industry. You have 7 out of 10 states that have voted on this have rejected legalization in the last 4 years. So the trend line is very much against it. Now we're seeing in the New York Times, of all places, in CNN, of all places, hardly the, you know, just say no Nancy Reagans of the world. These publications now are running every other day. It's a story about the harms of marijuana, about a new study that's finding, we just had a study that came out that said if you're under the age of 50 and you're regularly using marijuana, you are 6 times more likely to have a heart attack. That was in the CNN yesterday. And you have all these stories about the kids that have been harmed, the psychosis, the schizophrenia. These are things that were being called reefer madness in the pages of some of these publications. Now they're running these stories on the front page. I mean, just go check out the New York Times and Google marijuana and see what they've been running over the last 6 months. So I definitely think there's been a sea change. I think a lot of voters and a lot of researchers now they're looking at places like Colorado. They're seeing what's happening, and they're seeing that it's totally a situation of buyer's remorse in terms of what was promised and what we've actually gotten. Now, I think, here in Colorado, I think we're still waiting for that reckoning. I do think there's a lot of people at the grassroots level that, there's enough people being impacted now. You had the, Aubrey Adams from Pueblo in the story that we were discussing, about Pueblo and marijuana. She's in that Wall Street Journal story. Aubrey, her son, became addicted to this substance, and that drove her advocacy. And, you have other people like my former neighbor, Laura Stack here, who now lives in Castle Rock. Her son, Johnny, died as a result of dabbing high-potency marijuana. So we have now more and more parents, unfortunately, who are being adversely impacted, kids who are being adversely impacted here in Colorado, where I think there's more support to do something to, really take this industry back. But right now, the political structures in the state are just so bad. I mean, Polis is one of the most pro-pot governors in the whole country. He's terrible. He's not listening to public health or parents. We just had a bill, talk about the most modest effort at regulation on this industry. The bill was just killed in committee a couple days ago here in Colorado. It was going to just say, look, until you get to 25, you probably shouldn't be able to use these high potency products. So we're going to cap the potency of the marijuana products you can get up to the age of 25. And that bill was a total non-starter for the industry. They organized everyone around killing that bill in committee, and they were very successful with it. And it was a Democratic senator who brought it, Senator Amabile. So I think right now we're in this kind of, industry reign of terror, if you will, in this state. But, maybe with the new gubernatorial election, we'll get some more reasonably minded people who say, look, maybe we should have some common sense regulations at the very least.
Luca Niforatos, Executive Vice President of Smart Approaches to Marijuana, joining Jeff and Bill live. Yeah, could you help us outline for the listeners what you believe those smart approaches to change the law could be? I don't think we're ever going to be able to go back and make it illegal. I don't think that we can put the toothpaste back in the tube, nor could we do something like making alcohol or even guns, despite the Democrats' best efforts down at the Golden Dome to make firearms illegal. What are the solutions, in your opinion, to get a better control in the industry?
Yeah, well, I think from our perspective and from my perspective, you want as little as few drugs available to our kids and in our communities as possible. Because when people use drugs, it impacts the community, whether it's marijuana or anything else. They go out and drive, they show up to work, they have families, their parents, they have young kids. So there are a lot of impacts to the community and to the family that drugs have and that marijuana has. So the idea is to get their prevalence down. So if it can't be illegal, we need to have a lot more restrictions. You think about like what we did with cigarettes, right? We've made them almost, very difficult to afford, very difficult to find. They don't advertise them. We've had huge lawsuits against the industry. I think we're going to have lawsuits against the marijuana industry one day as well. So we need to have restrictions. I think that starts with capping the potency of marijuana here in Colorado. Bills like Senator Amabile's that was just killed by the industry are very common sense. They need to be advanced. We need to reduce the potency of these products because we didn't have high potency marijuana 10 years ago. So we're only beginning to understand what this is doing to people now. And so the industry is making a truckload of money off of it, but at the expense of public health and at the expense of people's brains. And most of the folks using them don't even know what it's going to do to them long term. And I think that's pretty scary. So we need to do something about potency. We need to reduce the reach of this industry in marketing. We have a lot of issues now in this state. We didn't allow the industry to market on billboards, for example. Now they can market on billboards here in Colorado. I don't think they should be allowed on the radio like they are right now. I don't think they should eventually be allowed on TV. So we need to restrict advertising. We need to restrict the amount of these stores that can be placed around the state. We're at a place right now where we have literally thousands of pot shops, and we literally have more than twice the number of Starbucks and McDonald's combined in this state right now. So that's just tremendous commercialization of this drug and tremendous availability to our kids and to our lower income and more vulnerable communities. I think we need to do something about that. So I think that's a starting place. And I will say, I wouldn't compare marijuana to guns, Bill, because guns, they have a very rightful place in our Constitution and in our Bill of Rights. It's our Second Amendment rights to own guns. We don't have a right to use drugs in this country, nor should we ever. So I do think that that's a little different. Tobacco is something that, that's been used by a large percentage of the population, much like alcohol has been. So those are two drugs, alcohol and tobacco, that, obviously we can probably never go back with, although I think we're learning a lot more about the harms, obviously, of alcohol recently. But when you look at marijuana, even though we have such an explosion in interest in this country with marijuana, it still is a very small sliver of the American population that's using it on a regular basis. And so I do think we can do a lot more to try to control its use, to keep it down, because we already have a lot of other issues with our legal drugs. And so I think that it's important to try to look at it that way. I think there are some states across the country that have legalized it that, they may have ballot measures soon to try to roll it back. And I think that'll be really interesting to see what happens there.
Luke Niforatos, Executive Vice President of Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Luke, give folks your X account so they can follow you there.
Yeah, check me out, Luke Niforatos. That's my X account, at Luke, Niforatos. Also, our organization, SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. You can find us on the web at learnaboutsam.org. And you can find us on, obviously X and everywhere else. You can just look up Smart Approaches to Marijuana. We have all the science, the research, the data. There's a lot of interesting things happening out, I think, in the world. There's a lot of things people have questions on. Rescheduling, there was a federal process that was initiated by the Biden administration to look at rescheduling marijuana to a lower schedule on our drugs restrictive categories. And that process has been halted. We're waiting to kind of see what's going to happen next there. But a lot of people were asking about that about 6 months ago. So we have all the news and information on what's going on there as well.
Great organization, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Check them out. Luke Niforatos, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for the honor of getting on this great show. God bless.
All right, coming up next, CU Regent Ken Montera is calling for an investigation of one of his colleagues on the CU Regent board. What is this all about? You're not going to want to miss it. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well, if you remember, it was last week that we had Jimmy Sengenberger on. He wrote an article in the Denver Gazette. CU Regent and pot purveyor Wanda James under scrutiny. Did CU Regent and marijuana retailer Wanda James break Board of Regents policies and state law to advance her own business interests at the expense of the institution she's sworn to serve? Well, there's a call for an investigation coming from both the Regent chair and vice chair. And joining us is Ken Montera, CU Board of Regents vice chair, who is asking for some insight into what's going on. To give us his perspective, Ken Montera, thanks so much for joining the Jeff and Bill Show, Mr. Regent.
Hey, good morning.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
So you put out a statement. Tell the folks about this statement.
Yeah, we recently, actually, this goes back, if I could take us back a little bit. In 2021, the Colorado legislature created a funded program directing the Colorado School of Public Health, a jointly operated program at CU, Anschutz, CSU, and UNC, to continue research in evaluating the effects of high concentration THC on developing minds. The results of that research was concluded in late December of 2024, and on January 26, 2025, it was released. Soon after it was released, Regent James had a problem with the depiction of some illustrations within the study that they were distorted against people of color. She made that known to the president and to the chancellor of Anschutz, and those illustrations were taken down. But in addition, she made some additional claims that we had some concerns about. Soon after that, the board learned for the first time that Regent James was quoted in the online publication Green Market Report as saying that she had a conversation yesterday with the governor and members of the governor's team, and we're looking at pulling funding from the Colorado School of Public Health for this. In addition, coverage of the issue Westward reported that Regent James would like to see the entire T on THC campaign pulled and its remaining funds directed to grants for marijuana business owners who qualify for social equity licenses. So after reviewing this information and speaking with the board, we felt it was imperative that we understand specifically what happened. And after a lot of discussion with the full board, we made the decision as chair and vice chair to move this to an investigation with a third-party group that is bipartisan and objective to understand exactly what happened and to fully understand if Regent James violated Regent policy and Regent laws that can specifically talk about conflict of interest and influencing academic freedom, which I think both of those could be a possibility. But we want to make sure that an independent third-party group did the investigation so we can understand exactly what took place and we can move forward from there. As you probably know, the Board of Regents is a self-governing board. We're elected, and because of that, we have to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable for the actions that we take and that we ensure that we have objective and credible relationships with our campuses and the constituents that we serve, and that's why Kelly, our chair, and I believe that it was important to move forward. I do want to add that there was bipartisan verbal support for the majority of the board to move forward with this investigation. And that's kind of it in a nutshell.
We're talking with Ken Montera, CU Board of Regents Vice Chair. And as Jimmy Sengenberger pointed out in his article, Wanda James, another regent, part of her history and her background is that she co-founded the nation's first Black-owned legal medical marijuana dispensary in 2009 and later opened a recreational pot shop, Simply Pure. She's helped Governors John Hickenlooper and Jared Polis shape state marijuana policies. In January, the self-described pothead, who, quote, gets elevated daily, unquote, has alleged on social media that the campaigns against her are race-based. Is that, from your perspective, is any of this motivated by race?
No, that couldn't be further from the truth. We have the responsibility fiduciarily to protect the University of Colorado. And if we believe there's a conflict of interest, if there's a violation of policy, of Regent law, or even statutory law, it's incumbent on us to do the necessary work to ensure that we protect the university. And that's exactly what's happening here. Regent James requested that those images that she felt were insensitive to minority communities be taken down. She contacted our president, Todd Solomon, and the chancellor at Anschutz Medical Center and voiced her concern. Those images were taken down within 24 hours. She continues to raise the issues around those images, but there was not a regent that objected to the removal of those images, and those actions were taken almost immediately. This is not about race. This is about the efficacy of the University Board of Regents and how important it is that we demonstrate a balanced and bipartisan view on how we run the University of Colorado. We serve too many Coloradoans not to be objective and to ensure that we are not compromising ourselves, our academic standards, and the academic freedom of research that takes place at our university. When we start infringing on the academic freedom of research within our university, we compromise what higher education stands for.
Talking with Ken Montera, CU Board of Regents, Vice Chair, regarding a call for an investigation of a fellow regent, Wanda James. Tell us about the process. What does this look like moving forward?
Sure. The first thing that would take place is we turn this over to our chief legal counsel, and she will determine who that third-party group would be. I won't even know about that until that final determination is made. It's not being influenced by the Board of Regents or by the chair or myself or the administration of the university. I want to make sure that's clear. Our president has no place in this. This is purely self-governing by the Board of Regents. Once that group is selected, which I believe is going to happen this week, then we will have to turn over all pertinent information that we have relative to the situation, and they will move forward questioning all the individuals that potentially were involved in some of these decisions and to find out what took place specifically. I would hope that we can have this wrapped up in 2 to 3 weeks so that we can move on, because we have a lot more important issues that we need to deal with as the leaders of the University of Colorado.
Talking with Ken Montera, CU Board of Regents Vice Chair. Have you heard directly from Wanda James?
I have not. She has made a number of comments publicly through social media and through interviews. I believe there's an article in the Denver Post today that's titled something about the lynching of Wanda James. And as I mentioned, she continues to come back to these images. The images are not the issue. They were never the issue. The issue is the question about whether or not she directed or asked to have funding taken away from the University of Colorado School of Public Health and diverted to marijuana store owners, and whether or not she has compromised research and the credibility of the research that was carried on for 3 years by 3 universities at a very high degree. Keep in mind, this was meant to inform the people of Colorado and directed by the Colorado legislature to inform the people of Colorado the detriment effect of high-level THC in cannabis on developing minds. And the entire program was meant to inform Coloradoans. And one additional point that I'd like to make is the gentleman that created the website and the images is African American. He agreed also to take down those images, but this was not done from my perspective with any racial bias, but we didn't want to appear that it was distorted, and so those images were taken down by our president and chancellor.
Talking with Ken Montero, Vice Chair of the CU Board of Regents. All right, I want to pivot here because we just got a few more minutes with you. Deion Sanders, I adore the guy. I mean, I got a chance to go up there and play. Man, the influence he's had on the program, fantastic. We got to go down and stand near the field. Travis Hunter, I got to share this story with you, okay? He's obviously heading off into the NFL now, but my son was on the sidelines. My son's 11 years old, okay? Players getting ready, players getting focused. They're ready for the big game. They're warming up, all that stuff. One player came by to say hi and to play catch with him. He had no idea who I was. No, we're just standing on the sidelines, right? Comes by, is the most talented kid on the entire program. Travis Hunter throws the ball a few times with my son. He'll never forget it. Tell us about the football program, Deion Sanders, things moving forward. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, first of all, you hit the nail on the head. Deion Sanders has brought a level of excitement to Colorado football that we haven't had since Coach McCartney was here, and maybe even in some cases has gone beyond that. The excitement that you feel when you're at a CU football game is palpable. I mean, I was here as a student in the late 70s, and I can tell you I never felt anything like that. And the person that you mentioned, that young man that threw the pass to your son, is one of the finest young men I think I've ever met. He's humble, he's talented, he's hungry, and I think we're going to be seeing him as an outstanding player on Sundays. As far as the contract, it's still in process. Rick George, our athletic director, and Justin Schwartz, our chancellor, are in negotiations right now. We don't get involved with that as Regents until it comes time to sign the contract, but Justin and Rick know that they have our full support. We want to bring Deion Sanders back to the University of Colorado, keep him at the University of Colorado, and continue this tradition and hopefully win a Big 12 championship. And I think it's within his grasp. So as soon as I know something, we'll let you know, but I have all the faith in the world in Rick and Justin to bring this home.
It is so exciting. If you haven't been up to a CU football game, it is an experience like something you'll never experience in your life. It is the energy, the passion, and then what I saw there was something very needed in Colorado, because I'm a political guy, right? I saw Republicans, Democrats all together supporting the CU football program, that and the kids that are playing there. This is something you just don't get much anymore, especially in Colorado. It was beautiful. You're doing great work there. Any other updates on CU? How are things going up there from your perspective?
I think it's going really well. You know, admissions at CU Boulder are up. The campuses are growing. They're strong. I feel very good about the chancellors that we have in place right now. Justin came from Penn State, and he's running Boulder. Jennifer Sobanet has come into UCCS and is dealing with some difficult challenges we're having at UCCS. And our new chancellor at Ken Christian at CU Denver is doing a great job too. They're all pretty new. Don Elliman, who runs the Anschutz Medical Complex, has done a phenomenal job bridging public and private partnerships to increase funding and to ensure that CU is providing the best possible health care it can to Colorado and people literally around the nation. So the research work that's happening at Anschutz is tremendous. We're in the process. We've been funded to do the first full eye transplant, and we're working on that research, and hopefully we'll have news about that in the near future. But I couldn't be more impressed or more pleased with the leadership of our campuses, the direction they're moving, and even the board that we have. We have a highly functional board. Unfortunately, we're in a difficult time right now. We're trying to get through and understand some things. But the fact is, this is probably one of the most functional boards that I've ever been a part of, and I'm proud to serve with both the Democrats and Republicans on this board.
Talking with Ken Montera, Vice Chair of the CU Board of Regents, regarding Wanda James and a call for an investigation to her. Well, Ken, I got a chance to meet your president up there. I shook his hand and I looked him right in the eye and I said, Deion Sanders is doing amazing things. You keep him around. I made to use my one moment to lobby him to go all in because I think the world of Deion. Ken, thank you so much for the time today. Appreciate you giving us insight into what's happening with the CU Board of Regents. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks for having me, and have a good day.
We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. Phone lines are open 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-819-5115. A growing scandal among the CU Regents with Wanda James. Well, she's in the Denver Post calling it a lynching. You just heard from Ken Montera. What do you think? Is this the right investigation? It seems like there's some smoke there. There might be some fire. I'm glad Ken Montera and others are calling for the investigation. We'll take your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Just wrapped up a conversation with Ken Montera, CU Board of Regents Vice Chair on this investigation to Wanda James. And he's right. This article just came out this morning, Bill. Denver Post, CU Regent decries public lynching after board seeks probe of efforts to cut funding to marijuana program. The University of Colorado Board of Regents is launching an independent investigation into one of its own, Regent Wanda James, after the dispensary owner pushed to cut funding from a CU campaign to educate youth and do research about the risks of high-potency marijuana. James, the first black dispensary owner in the country and CU's first black female regent in decades, called the investigation a public lynching meant to tarnish her name because she decried imagery used on the education campaign's website as racist for portraying negative tropes about black families and drug use. But as you heard from CU Regent Ken Montera, there's a lot more to this, including her own statements, Wanda James's own statements in Westward and others about this program. Bill, would you consider this a public lynching?
The issue that I have in that statement is the public side of it. I don't believe this necessarily would qualify as something that you would say is necessarily as public, because they do have a third-party investigation that is not going to be doing this, in the public. That they're not going to have daily meetings. They're not going to have daily press conferences and updates. They're not holding meetings like you would in Congress, where you would have these public testimonies. That's not what's happening. This is a third-party investigation that will go on behind closed doors, and then things will be revealed. Now, if she wants to, I disagree with the using the term lynching, but the thing that bothers me is the public idea. Is she's saying this is being dragged out into public and we're doing all this? No, we're not. We're talking about problems that may or may not exist, and they're going to be investigated. And I find it interesting that the issue that James is bringing up is not the same thing that Montera is bringing up. And so the allegations are not matching the defense. So we can, at least so far, come to a conclusion that someone is aiming in the wrong direction. Now, we don't know until this investigation.
Or muddying the waters.
Yeah. And who knows? Is it Montera in the investigation saying that she directed or tried to tamp down research or tried to make sure it was funneled in this direction? Or is this more about them coming after her for X, Y, or Z? Or is it more about the website? We'll find that out in the investigation. But the two stories about what the problems are don't match from either side.
Right, because she goes, racist images, and everyone's like, all right, we'll take them all down.
Yeah.
In fact, nobody fought him. Not a single person on the Regent board fought.
Said, okay, we'll take
the
that
idea
down.
that the images were racist. But here's the claim from Ken Montera in his statement. The board has learned that Regent James was quoted in an online publication, Green Market Report, as saying she had a conversation yesterday with the governor and members of the governor's team, and we're looking at pulling funding from the Colorado School of Public Health. And in addition to that, in Westward, said she'd like the entire T on THC campaign pulled, with its remaining funds directed to grants for marijuana business owners who qualify for social equity licenses, she being the person who created the program.
Yeah, and then the problem being, and here's where I've got the problem with that one, is the idea that here's a program that I created and I'm involved with, and I want this funding from the school going that direction. To me, it just looks like a conflict of interest. I'm not saying it is, but first blush, that's a conflict.
And she helped create it, I believe, with her policy recommendations, that type of thing. So, goodness, lots to cover. In studio now, John Fabbricatore. We're going to get into Jeanette Vizguera. You're listening to Jeff and Bill Show.
This is 710 KNUS.
It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Thursday, March 20th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe and Blake Olson, bringing you the hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Man, this story blew up this week. Jeanette Vizguera, this mom, she was just at Target. What happened? The big bad ICE agents picked her up and threw her in jail and she's going away. That's not the story at all. This you could see coming from a mile away, that the progressive leadership was going to try to make this illegal immigrant activist a martyr for ICE activities. I didn't buy it, started digging into it, and the guy who's actually had to deal with this activist for the last 15 years, you know the name, you know the voice, John Fabbricatore. He's the pro on this. In fact, Fox is picking him up. He's going to be briefing Fox News on all this coming up on Monday. This is not what Mayor Mike Johnston, Michael Bennett, John Hickenlooper, Jared Polis want you to believe. She is a radical anti-ICE activist who's been flagrantly breaking the law for the last 15 or so years. It's time for her to go. And Donald Trump, Tom Homan are delivering that, and the progressives are trying to spin a story that's just not true. You want to hear the story on this, the details. We got it for you. John Fabbricatore coming up, but now it's time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
34 and cloudy on the first day of spring in Denver. Expecting a high of 56 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story.
7 out of 10 states that have voted on this have rejected legalization in the last 4 years. So the trend line is very much against it.
Luke Niforatos from Smart Approaches to Marijuana and My Old Neighbor.
Please won't you be my neighbor? My neighbor? I'm glad.
Luke clearing up the smoke and helping people see clearly the reality of dope in our communities. Wall Street Journal with a big article and discussing all the problems in Pueblo due to the pot after Amendment 64 passed 10 years ago. God willing, the culture is changing a little. Luke?
I think a lot of people, they think that Colorado's just making all this money off of legal weed. And they're just stunned when they find out that when you look at the percentage of marijuana tax revenue in this state versus our, annual budgeted revenues, it's less than 1% of our state tax revenue is coming from the marijuana industry. So we have been making pennies on the dollar for a number of years, and I think communities are getting really sick of it.
You got that right. An executive order aimed at dismantling the Department of Education is set to be signed by President Trump today, and about 2,000 teachers, protesters will be at the state capitol today. Jeff will be there. They're upset at spending or cuts to annual increases. Kristi Burton Brown, Colorado State Board of Education, on with Jeff and Bill this morning and says that budgeting by Democrats is where the problem lies, and there are too many teachers in some districts.
We don't want to just fire all these people. Give us like almost a grace period to be able to average out the student numbers instead of suddenly dropping off. Now, most conservatives would say, and most budget-conscious people would say, if you don't have the student population, you obviously shouldn't have as many employees because you don't have as many kids to serve. So why are we over-employing people, especially on the admin side, when the student population doesn't matter?
Governor Polis wants the teachers to go teach instead of chanting hey, hey, ho, ho on a Thursday morning in March in downtown Denver. Jeff will have more tomorrow. The U.S. reportedly wants to take over Ukraine's largest power plant as a part of a ceasefire deal with Russia. Ukrainian little guy Zelensky said that he talked about one power plant, which is under Russian occupation, with Trump. Federal officials say a Georgetown University foreign exchange student spread Hamas propaganda Indian national Badar Khan Suri was taken into custody outside his home Monday night. Suri's lawyer says he is here on a student visa and has filed a lawsuit petitioning for his release. Colorado GOP Chair Dave Williams on the show this morning as well. Criminals from Antifa and socialists in Denver intimidating once again the Antlers Hotel this time in the Springs, and the Antlers said that they couldn't host a GOP event with Speaker Steve Bannon.
I think it ultimately comes back to Trump derangement syndrome. I think they were really upset that we took back the country for righteousness and goodness and the American way. And when they heard that Steve Bannon was coming to town, they had to take out their frustration on our event because they have lost control, and they're losing more and more of that control in Colorado.
But they do have a new site. This is the third time they had to change it, Phil Long Music Hall. But once again, oh yes, those lefties have been just a pain. But the Patriots will not back down. Authorities say 2 men escaped from an ICE facility in Aurora earlier this week. 2 men reportedly escaped from the Denver Contract Detention Facility on Tuesday when a power outage caused a door to unlock. 32-year-old Joel Jose Gonzalez was arrested last month in Adams County. 24-year-old Guylan Vito Romero was arrested last month in Douglas County. ICE says the search is on for the 2 men right now. The NCAA tournament tips off today. 1 regional in Denver at Ball Arena. Plenty of games all morning and tonight. This morning we have Wisconsin and Montana, BYU and VCU. The first game tips off at 11:30. Tonight, Yale and Texas A&M and UC San Diego and Michigan. Tonight, the Lakers beat the Nuggets, the Leafs over the Avalanche. 24 in Englewood, 25 in Brighton, 26 in Denver. And Jeff and Billy continue.
Republicans' secret plan for dealing with the Democrats is called Operation Let Them Speak.
Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS. Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. So Tuesday, you watched the progressive infrastructure in Colorado absolutely melt down on this illegal alien activist, Jeanette Vizguera, being picked up outside of a Target and then begins the process to get her out of here. Denver Post, Colorado immigration activist Jeanette Vizguera has been detained by ICE. We will keep fighting for our mom, says one of the kids. But there's so much more to this. And I can tell you, being in politics for 20 plus years, you can sniff a progressive story being spun quicker than anything else. And this was absolutely it. And the person to respond, to provide the actual context on all of this, John Fabbricatore, he's even in the New York Post today, calling her horrible and smug. She's been evading ICE for years, used churches to do this. She's out there, publicly flaunting the fact that she's an illegal alien and daring the government to deport her. And finally, Trump and Oman are like, all right, you out of here. But to give us some insight,
You know the name, you know the voice. JFab, John Fabbricatore's in studio. Thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Thanks for having me in again. This is the second time in a week. I'm getting comfortable in this seat.
I love it. I love it. Dude, we got seriously the best resource in Colorado with you, man. I mean, Fox is picking you up. New York Post is. You're legendary. So let's talk about this case, this person.
Sure.
You've known her for years.
15
Give us
years.
the background.
Yeah, so I've been working on her case. I built her case file up. I mean, myself and other ICE agents that I worked with at the time. Her case started under the Obama administration. That's when the Obama administration is the one who found her deportable. So for the left to say that this is a Trump thing, it was an Obama judge, the Obama administration, that found her deportable the first time. So they can try to say that this is a Trump thing. She was arrested under the Obama administration, went into custody under the Obama administration, was found deportable under the Obama administration, and even left the United States, deported herself, tried to sneak back in, got prosecuted again under the Obama administration. So look, the left is going to push this narrative that she's a mom and she's this and she's that. And this woman has protested against ICE, calling for the abolishment of ICE, has protested against our president as an illegal alien. Right. While she may have First Amendment rights, because actually they do, illegal aliens in our country do, but we have the right to deport them as well.
Well, and it's the old adage, if you're going to be here quietly. I mean, Peter Boyles on Saturday had 2 illegal immigrants that wouldn't even reveal their location. So, you have that element of folks that are, just working quietly, not raising any profiles. In this case, she goes out with a sign and is going, I'm an illegal immigrant, down with ICE. And she's surprised she got picked up.
Well, there's this interesting thing that the left does. They try to say that community organizers or people who protest should be protected because of the First Amendment, even if they're illegally present. And while she has the right to say what she wants to say in the United States, sure, that's fine. It's in the Constitution. But immigration law also says that you're an illegal alien, and if you're found deportable, it's time for you to go. She's fought this for 15 years. She's failed in every court she's gone into. So to say that she hasn't had due process, like the left is saying, that Michael Johnson, the mayor, is saying, is bunk. It's so bogus.
Well, speaking of that, I think we can pull up what Mike Johnston has said. Adam's going to race back there. Adam's like an octopus. He's got a million arms he's got to do for us. So, Bill, can we play this audio from Mayor Mike Johnston earlier this week?
I think we are all going to find out together. Let's see what happens. Ready? Okay, everyone hold your breath.
I know a number of you have been tracking this morning information about Jeanette Vizquera, who has been picked up by ICE. I just want to make clear people should know what this is. This is not immigration enforcement. This is Soviet-style political persecution of political dissidents under the guise of immigration enforcement. This is not someone with a criminal record. This is a mom of American citizens who works at Target and has started a nonprofit. This is not something that makes our community safer, in my mind. I think it makes our community lawless. I know a number of you have been tracking this morning information about Jeanette Vizquera.
I think that it's starting over again. All right, so Fab can barely contain himself here. All right, your response, sir.
I can't help it. I'm watching this. I'm counting off the lies. I'm probably shouldn't be saying it on 1 lie, 2 lie, 3 lies, 4 lies. He's calling her a political dissident. A United States citizen commenting on this and then getting in trouble would be a political dissident, because that would violate the First Amendment, and it's a U.S. citizen. An illegal alien saying it, an illegal alien can say it. Again, she still has the right to be deported, and she was found deportable many times. And for the mayor to say she's not a criminal, she was convicted of Social Security fraud. She actually had numerous counts of Social Security fraud, and they pled it down to 1 count, which everyone knows that that's what they do. But go look at the original indictment on her Social Security fraud. She's also been convicted for driving without a license, driving without insurance. She was convicted of 8 U.S.C. 1325 for re-entering the United States after she self-deported herself. So to say she's not a criminal, the left loves to change the narrative, to change descriptions on stuff, to make up stories and to put out this false narrative. And it's not true. And I'm glad that we're starting to put out the truth. ICE is fighting back. Fox News has printed some information on it. The truth needs to come out that this woman is a subversive.
Talking with John Fabbricatore. He's with the Heritage Foundation now, but a storied 30-year career with ICE. So part of the narrative they're putting out there is that she's had children here.
Mm-hmm. Anchor babies. Yeah.
And grandchildren. And so grandma. Trump's throwing grandma back across the border. Your response, John Fabbricatore.
I'm a grandpa, so you know what are they trying to say, that grandpas and grandmas can't cause crimes? They, absolutely they can. So she's been here for a long time. She should have been deported in 2009, and she wouldn't have had those anchor babies that she's had. So the problem is, when we don't enforce immigration law from the start, this is what we wind up with. We wind up with somebody who's been here for many years, and then the left can say, well, they've integrated into the community, they've had kids. If we would have enforced the law like the law was supposed to be enforced in 2009, we would not be talking about Vizguera today.
Talking with John Fabbricatore. John, I mean, the message being sent to is really important, okay? Donald Trump is not messing around anymore.
No.
She was at Target where she was working, and she was working why? You told me off air.
Well, she had received 4 stays of deportation through the Biden administration. And with those stays of deportation, the Biden administration attached an EAD, which is an employment authorization document, to those stays, which allowed Vizguera to then work in the U.S. The Biden administration knew she was deportable, gave her those stays of deportation. So this whole narrative that she does not have a deportation removal order cannot be true. The Biden administration gave her stays against those deportations and then gave her a work authorization document on top of that, because the Biden administration was about open borders and creating chaos in this country.
Wow. So the message being sent, though, by Trump and the rest of, and Tom Homan and ICE and folks like yourself is, get out.
Yes.
I don't care if you're a grandma with kids and grandkids and you've had deportation stays and those types of things. Self-deport.
Right.
Get out of here. Now, do you think people are going to use the app? We talked a little bit about this before, but they've got this home app, CBP Home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're going to use it?
Well, some people have already. I mean, there's a high-profile case right out of New York on one of the students from Columbia University, student from India, using the CBP Home app to deport herself, remove herself from the country because she knew that she was going to have her visa revoked. So she used the app to enter Canada. So yes, I think some people will use it. They should, because people who are here illegally and who are not criminals like Jeanette Vizguera can use the app to go home and then make a legal entry into the U.S. because we're all about legal immigration. You and I have talked about this multiple times. Legal immigration is good immigration, but illegal immigration is destroying the United States.
Talking with John Fabbricatore. Now, we're talking about Jeanette Vizguera, who's this illegal immigrant activist, making tons of news, and all the progressives are running out there trying to spin the story that little grandmas are being picked up and kicked back over the border. She was an activist. Talk about some of the stuff she's posted online.
She's posted some horrible stuff. She posted a picture of Donald Trump, President Trump, getting scalped and shot with arrows. She's posted stuff against ICE agents numerous times. There are posts on her board where people are calling for ICE agents to be put in the ground, for the left to arm themselves against ICE agents. She doesn't speak out against that. She wears clothing calling for the abolishment of ICE, that cursing out ICE. She was selling clothing from a church with a curse word on it, I can't say on the air, and then ICE underneath it. From a church, she was selling that. So, she's done a lot to be this, what the left likes to call her a community organizer, I call her a subversive, foreign national. That's what she is.
Well, let's talk about these churches. She hid in a church for a while?
Yeah, so here's a little story for you. Like, my history with her is very storied. So in around 2019, I made an agreement with her then attorney to allow her to leave the United States on her own, and that I would not put her handcuffs on her if she bought a plane ticket out of the U.S. She agreed to that. Her attorney agreed to that. They were supposed to meet me at DIA the next day. So she leaves one church, which she was in sanctuary in, starts driving to DEA, makes a detour, and puts herself in another church, a Unitarian church in downtown Denver, and puts herself back into sanctuary, violating the agreement that I had made with her. So she's a liar. She's lied throughout her whole life. That's what she does. She plays off of people. This is how she creates her income. Besides working at Target, right now they've got a GoFundMe for her with thousands of dollars in it. This is what this woman does. This is what she's done from the beginning. We've tried to work with her. It definitely didn't work out. And, she needs to leave the United States. She's done nothing but violate the law since she's been here.
I mean, you've been face-to-face with her.
Yes,
it sounds like
times,
multiple times.
Yeah, multiple times.
You can read a person, part of law enforcement. You can just get a gut sense of who they are. Tell us about that.
This is why I call her a smug person. I've been in the room with her. Like she does not care about U.S. law. She believes that she has every right to be here and laws don't apply to her. We've seen that she's driven without driver's license. She doesn't have insurance. She's violated the law multiple times. She's been to court for immigration. An immigration judge gave her voluntary departure the first time, allowing her to voluntarily leave the United States so that she would not have any violations on her immigration record, and would have allowed her to come back into the U.S. legally. And she violated that judge, said, nope, I'm not doing it, not leaving, decided not to leave. She then files a Board of Immigration Appeals. The immigration appeals going through, and she leaves. She sneaks out of the country, visits Mexico for months, and then tries to sneak back into the U.S., which violated her appeal process. So they threw her appeal out. So time after time after time, this woman has just thrown her middle finger up against our laws here in the U.S. She thinks our laws do not pertain to us. And this is what she does. When the left holds her up, puts her on a pedestal.
John Fabbricatore, a 30-year career with ICE. We're talking about Jeanette Vizguera, who you're going to hear a lot about in the news because the left's going to try to make her a martyr. But you got the truth coming here from John Fabbricatore. John, a lot of people are concerned about the role churches play in this. I've seen articles that churches aren't quite as interested in harboring illegal immigrants as they did during Trump's first administration, in part because of all the problems we have in our communities attributed to illegal aliens. So even churches are kind of like, I'm not sure we want to do this again. How have NGOs and churches facilitated illegal immigration?
Yeah, during the first Trump administration, I believe I had 6 foreign nationals living in churches in Trump's first one. And one of those illegal aliens was living in a church down south. He left the church, got drunk, was DUI, and hit a father riding his motorcycle, father of 5, killing him. That was one of the ones that we were seeking after. He wound up hiding in a church in South Colorado. So we had 6 cases at the time. Jeanette Vizguera was one of them. And this time, Trump came back into power and he said, you know what? We're not going to do this church thing. We're throwing that out. We're throwing that out. If you're a criminal alien inside a church, we might go in and arrest you. Now, they haven't done that yet, but he opened it up to do it. And again, Trump does things, for a reason. And he took that away because it's making churches think, they're like, oh my gosh, we're not protected if we have an illegal alien inside. Well, maybe we don't want to do that. I think it's a good thing. It's not good to subvert the laws of the United States. It's not good to break into this country illegally.
Through these NGOs in order to facilitate illegal immigration?
Yeah, and in many instances, it has been. And it's something that DOJ is currently looking into now with some of these NGOs. Money that's coming from the government through the states, and then the states are then divvying that money out to NGOs who aid and abet illegal immigration. And, we've seen it, some of the apartment complexes here in Aurora, Colorado. We've seen it in downtown Denver. Money that taxpayers are giving to the federal government is then being recycled through states into NGOs to harbor, illegal aliens.
Talking with John Fabbricatore, a storied career with ICE, former regional director of ICE, and now with the Heritage Foundation. We're going to continue our conversations. If you have a question, give us a phone call at 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-819-5115, 720-819-5115. Guys, let's talk about your hair. If you're losing it and desire to have it back, then Advanced Hair Restoration has the easiest guaranteed solution. Their simple one-day treatment offers life-changing results. I've seen it with my own eyes. Guys, it's not magic, but close to it. They put your hair where you need it the most, and bam, it grows. It's actually science. Advanced Hair has it all. Top-rated Dr. Tanya Paul's modern technology, and best of all, you get your very own natural hair that begins regrowing the very next day. Advanced Hair even guarantees it will grow for life. So schedule your free consultation now at 720-459-HAIR. That's 720-459-HAIR. If you qualify, you'll get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver and has changed the lives of tens of thousands of people. So don't wait. Check out the before and afters online for yourself. Here's the phone number again, 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. We'll continue with John Fabbricatore, visiting fellow with the Heritage Foundation's Border Security and Immigration Center on this growing story. Jeanette Vizguera, the left, the Denver Post, Mayor Mike Johnston, the senators going, this is not the immigration enforcement intended to keep our country safe. This is Putin-style persecution. And then the guy that actually knows her going, no, she's horrible and smug. Put her on a trebuchet and send her back over to the other side. So you're not going to want to miss these details. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Joining us live in studios, John Fabbricatore, visiting fellow with the Heritage Foundation's Border Security and Immigration Center. Jeanette Vizguera is making all this news because Trump picked her up. She's an activist. Michael Bennett saying things like, no, a mother and a pillar in her community. I'm deeply concerned about ICE's actions to detain her without any due process, like a deportation order.
She's been through the court process multiple times, including under the Obama administration. Oh my gosh, man.
They're just so full of it. All right, we got a text message here into the studio for you. Is there a quota of people who may come legally from Mexico? If so, where are we with that number as far as legal applications?
So, that's a hard question to answer. So yes, there is, if we're talking about people who are coming through as immigrants. There's non-immigrant visas, and then there's immigrant visas. So people who are coming in to come in as a green card holder, as a permanent resident. There's a certain number that are allowed in from each country. But then there's also other visas like your H-1B visas, your H-1A visas, your student visas, your travel visas. If you're coming in for business or for pleasure. So there's tons of different visas where you can come in legally and actually even work here lawfully inside the United States. And then there are other visas for countries in which we're accepting people to go through the process to be an immigrant and earn your citizenship.
Yeah, gotcha. Great insight. All right, I want to talk to you about this headline: to escape ICE detention facility in Aurora. ICE claims local authorities refused to help. What happened here?
Well, first of all, being a prior ICE guy, I'm going to come out and say it just right off the top of the bat because I don't want people to say that I'm protecting ICE. ICE and GEO screwed up if there's an escape. I'm going to say that right away. I love Danielle Jurinsky. She is one of my favorites. And, her and I will probably butt heads on this a little bit. But there was an escape. There's going to be an investigation on that escape. The contractor of the facility will be investigated on why these two individuals were allowed to escape. That's GEO Corporation that provides the officers at the facility. ICE will have somebody come in, an OIG come in and do that investigation. But the bottom line is these two individuals did escape. ICE did ask Aurora PD for help, and Aurora PD declined.
Yeah. Now, the reason Aurora PD declined. What? I mean, is it state law? Is it because I'm seeing some statements here going, well, it was 5 hours later. They could be in Kansas at this point, having Aurora chase them down at that part.
It's hard to say without the investigation when these guys actually did leave. Yes, it was 5 hours from the time that they had the blackout when they lost power to the facility. And there's all these security protocols that are supposed to be to happen at that time. There's supposed to be a mandatory count. You lock down a facility and you count every single head in the facility. That takes some time. So from the time that they had the blackout till they actually knew when two people were missing, that doesn't mean that they'd had escaped the full facility by that time. For Aurora PD to say, well, they're gone for 5 hours, how do you know that they weren't in between a walkway on the building still waiting to have a good chance to escape, or in the woods right outside? There's a park right there. There's woods right there. Those guys could have been hiding there waiting for somebody.
What if they were waiting for a big thunderstorm and they were crawling through the sewer pipe like it? I'm sorry,
it could happen.
To stand in the rain like this.
Yeah. It could happen.
I also want to know, so they're talking about the idea of a 5 hour gap as far as when the crime could have occurred and then going in. So I hate to point this out. So that would mean like if, say, someone in my family was kidnapped and I called them 5 hours later, they would go, sorry, I can't do anything. Or maybe someone robbed my home and it was 5 hours later. I came back 5 hours later and someone had gone to my home. They would go, yeah, nothing we can do about that. It's just been too much time. No, they wouldn't. That's the part that I don't understand on this. I don't spend the timeline.
Right. There still needs to be an investigation.
Yes.
And I don't believe ICE was asking them to come in and solve that crime right there. I think, ICE was just probably asking for additional units to be in the neighborhood, to put out a bolo for be on the lookout for, these two individuals. I think some of the pushback is people are saying that, House Bill 19-1124 precludes officers from the Aurora PD from helping, but it does not. Section 5 of that act says that local law enforcement can help ICE in criminal acts, and in a criminal investigation. This, at that time, the minute these two guys escaped, it's now a criminal investigation. It is it's 18 USC, and I'd have to look it up. It's on my phone somewhere. But it's criminal code. If you escape from a federal detention facility, you're violating federal law. For a regular detention facility like the BOP, it is a felony. For ICE facilities, it's only a misdemeanor, but it's still a federal law.
Talking with John Fabbricatore about the two that escaped, what's the likelihood they're going to get picked up?
Well, unfortunately, I had an escape in 2019 when I was the field office director. We had 2 individuals escape off of the basketball court there. They were not found initially, and I think we found them within 72 hours. So our fugitive operations teams hit the street. They did a lot of investigating and were able to pick the 2 individuals up, pretty fast. An escape is never good. An investigation was done at that time of the facility concerning the escape, and there will be an investigation for this. But hopefully ICE will be able to pick these 2 individuals up pretty quick. But with any escape, it's very timely that you get all the resources you can to looking for these individuals as fast as you can.
Now, Danielle Jurinsky, city councilwoman, saying if the Aurora police come across them, they will absolutely arrest them as long as ICE gets warrants out for them. Do they need a warrant at this point?
Initially, I don't. This is where I'm going to argue the law aspect on this. Initially, they would not have needed a warrant because it's exigent circumstances and a crime had been committed. Now that there's a full day that's gone by, it's probably better for ICE to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office, get the warrants on this criminal violation, and make sure that those warrants are in hand so there can't be any argument on that. And I just looked it up. It's 18 U.S.C. Code 751, and it's if an escape from custody of ICE immigration, it would be a misdemeanor. So ICE should go get those warrants so that APD could have them in hand now. But initially, when it first occurred, you have probable cause to know that a crime's been committed. The warrants probably weren't needed initially for them to go out, but as time went on, then you probably would need the warrants. Yeah.
So you think good likelihood these guys will get picked up?
I'm hoping. I'm hoping
especially
that
with this Trump-Homan administration.
Yes, yeah. Initially when you have an escape, they go to areas where they're going to get help, which will be locally. They'll be hiding out in friends' apartments or whatever.
Did you ever see that reality TV show where they had guys like run off?
No.
And then professional, I guess,
bounty hunters
that like former military and law enforcement find them. And what I found fascinating about that was the ability to live with no connection to anybody in your world is actually really, really hard.
It's really hard. And you use phones that, are connected to things. And look, the ICE fugitive operations teams are awesome. They're very well trained.
Can I get a hat? We were talking about hats. Can I get an
I'm not
ICE
just saying that
fugitive
because I
operation
trained many of them. I was an instructor at the academy, taught fugitive operations. But no, they really are. They work with the U.S. Marshals fugitive units a lot. They're very well trained. They're great investigators. They know how to find fugitives. So they'll be out on the street looking for them. But no agent wants to look for an escapee because that means you failed somewhere down the road. You already use a lot of resources to put these guys in jail one time, and now you got to go back out and look for them a second time because they're an escape. Never a good thing.
So were you the Tommy Lee Jones figure in The Fugitive where you're going, we're going to check every barn house, chicken house, dog house in a 30-mile radius?
Luckily, I was honored to actually have attended the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Operations Training Academy as well as the ICE Fugitive Operations Training Academy. I loved working fugitive operations when I was an officer. It's something that I took a lot of pride in, taking a lot of really bad criminals off the street when I was with ICE. But the men and women of ICE are very much professionals. They will get this taken care of. But the big thing is, I want there to be a good relationship between Aurora PD and ICE. I don't like when there's fights like this. It's not good for the community. It's it's not good for me because I have a friendship with Danielle. Like I said, I love her to death, and I want to make sure that the right thing is happening for the community so that illegal alien criminals are not out on the streets.
Yeah, and I'm looking at mugshots of these two characters. Gaylond Vito Romero, he looks nice. And then Joel Jose Gonzalez.
Right. Both those guys came out of county jails too, Jeff. So
Yeah,
it's not like we snagged them off the street. They were found in county jails for certain crimes. I'm not sure what the crimes they committed were that put them in county jails to begin with, and that ICE then took them from the county jails to put them into the geolocation. But these guys are criminals. They were charged with something that they wound up in county jail to then wind up at the ICE facility.
Yeah, go look at these guys' mugshots, and if you see them out there, for sure notify Aurora PD or ICE. Yep. Everyone's working together on this. They're going to get them. So I want to go back to Jeanette Vizguera here real quick. John Fabbricatore has been working, I don't say with her, against her for the last 15 or so years because she's been ordered to deport over and over and over again. The Obama administration was the original deporters of her. Now, look, they're bringing in all these lawyers. Mm-hmm. They're getting the sob stories going. The kids are standing there going, Grandma's being deported, when this lady has been a radical progressive activist, including posting images of Donald Trump being scalped, calling for the end of ICE. I mean, terrible stuff. She's got to go. She's not assimilated. She's not trying to make America better. She believes in open borders. Now, let's talk legal side of this. Do you think there's a chance that the lawyers and the judges keep her here?
I really hope not. If we were still under the Biden administration, I would say yes. There would be a big chance because they would lean that in her favor. I'm hoping now that they look at the rule of law and everything that she's been through. If she hadn't been through the immigration court process multiple times, if I wouldn't have witnessed everything that she went through, I would say, well, maybe there's a chance, because I know immigration law. It's so convoluted that there's always some little thing that can either be a benefit or against somebody. So, but her case has been gone through with a fine-tooth comb over the years. I don't see any relief for her changing status and being able to stay here. But because having worked for immigration for 30 years, I will never say never.
John Fabbricatore, a storied 30-year career with ICE, retired ICE field office director, now with the Heritage Foundation. Good text message coming in here. Luis from Aurora would like to know what those fugitives might be wearing. How did you pick them out at this point?
Well, they've probably got normal clothes on now, but they would have left the facility wearing, some kind of like jogger type clothing. So there's different color coordinations at that facility for the higher level criminals, all the way from, people wear red all the way down to blue. So, and then there's a mix of colors if people are certain, criminals. So they would have left with some correctional clothing on. But since then, it's been a day now. I'm sure that they're in regular clothing by now.
All right, talking with John Fabbricatore. You got to follow him on X at, I just had it up, John E_Fab, F-A-B-B, John E_Fab. And if you see those two guys out running around, be sure to call 911. It's probably the easiest way to get a hold of them. I think this will pass over as the difference between Aurora PD and ICE. So long as they get the guys, that'll be bridge under the water.
I hope so.
Yeah. All right. We have had a great time talking with John Fabbricatore. Thank you for your great work, especially getting the truth out there about this, quote, horrible and smug activist. Dude, you're quoted in the New York Post. What a great line. Horrible, smug activist. So when you see the bleeding hearts out there going, Jeanette Vizguera is a grandma who just got picked up outside of Target. She's a, quote, pillar of the community, as Michael Bennett said. Don't believe it. Check in with John Fabbricatore for all the insight on the truth about these people. Brother, thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Thanks for having me back on. Thanks
again,
All right,
Bill. We'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Bill, I think this is one of the best shows we've ever had.
Yeah, this was good.
If you missed any of it, go to 710knus.com to download the podcast. Listen to this lineup we had. 6 o'clock hour, Kristi Burton Brown on the school protests taking place. Teacher protests later today. 2,000 teachers expected down at the state capitol. I'll be down there interviewing folks. This is going to be interesting. And if you're down there, come see me. I'd love to interview you. Dave Williams in the 7 o'clock hour on the Steve Bannon event next week that the left keeps harassing hotel owners to get them to cancel it. They've got a location that's not going to back down, and it's the Boot Barn Hall. There's always a connection with the Boot Barn there and the Republicans. Luke Niforatos joined us in the 8 o'clock hour detailing the collapse of the marijuana market in Pueblo. And then Ken Montera, man, there are times we talk about the news. There's times we make the news. Ken Montera joined us on a investigation taking place within CU Regents and Wanda James. And then John Fabbricatore wrapped it up with us on the true details about this Jeanette Vizguera character.
Yeah. JFab was fantastic. That was amazing.
Who the left is drawn out to be the victim grandma. Not true. So if you missed any of it, 710knus.com. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is